5 seconds. You're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is the October 15th, 2024 meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. Call to order. Note that the meeting is being recorded from Auburn Cable Television. It will be available online and stuff. Is anybody else recording? Nope. Okay. So as we get called to order on the meeting, review of the previous meeting minutes. We have just a short. Forgot to make copies of this one. I know it was emailed to everybody. Heather, if you want to, could you do a quick rundown? Remind people what it is?
Sure. We accepted the meeting minutes from our first meeting from 8/26. We toured the headquarters fire station, then we went to the dispatch center at the police station, and we toured the West Street station. And then we had a quick discussion on the follow-up meeting for tonight for the conceptual design. And we had some concerns brought up, and we all agreed that we would discuss further once we saw the design. And we scheduled the next meeting for tonight, and the meeting was adjourned at 8 p.m.
Okay. Any comments? Well, actually, any motion to accept these minutes?
Motion to accept the meeting.
Okay. Any comments, questions, concerns over the meeting, the minutes? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All those opposed? They're approved. So we'll get right into one of the biggest parts of the meeting is going to be the presentation from TechCon on the fire station conceptual drawings here. This next go round.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to the rest of the committee. I'd like to introduce Matt Salad from Tecton Architects. Matt has been with this project since the very beginning in 2018, assisted with the evaluation of all of the public safety facilities, and then was involved in the programming of the current building. So Matt has a presentation this evening with a couple of different options for the committee to review, and I believe, did you bring some show and tell things as well? It's all here, so the committee is going to have a lot of good information tonight to start some good discussion. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Salad from Tecton.
All right. Thank you, Chief, Chair, Committee. Pleasure to meet you all this evening. Some familiar faces, a lot of new faces that I haven't personally met, so I did want to just take a second to introduce myself, our project team. I believe you previously met Jeff McElravy. He's the principal in charge of our public safety market at Tecton Architects. And I am Matt Salad. I'm the project manager for this project. Like Chief had said, I've been working with the town for quite some time now, initially working through the existing conditions assessments of all police and fire facilities in town, providing recommendations on those facilities, and ultimately the initial design for the public safety complex, and now the fire headquarters. On our team, we also have H2M Architects, formerly Pacheco Ross Architects when you hired them. They're our firematic consultant. They specialize around the world in fire station outfitting, a lot of the specialty equipments, the hot zone, cold zone transitions, things like that. Consulting Engineering Services, CES, they're our mechanical engineering, fire protection, and plumbing engineer. Johnson Structural Engineers is our structural engineer out of Worcester. Ryder Levitt Bucknell, RLB out of Boston, is our cost estimator. They've provided a few estimates along the way thus far. And O'Reilly Talbot and Oakham OTO is our geotechnical engineer, if and when that time is needed to do some geotechnical investigation. This team in particular, we solely consult with and team together on public safety projects throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and throughout New England. So they understand our expectations, we understand theirs, and we've executed a number of successful projects regionally as well as locally around the town of Auburn. So what we're going to go through tonight is a little bit of an update on where we stand with the conceptual design for fire headquarters on Prospect Street. We're going to review conceptual site plan, then we'll roll through the floor plans. I can do a deep dive into that. So I'll go over some spatial organization on how those plans have come together. And then I'll flip over to a PDF so we can zoom in some more detailed images of the spaces, so you can get really feel of where all the pieces and components of the fire headquarters live within the new building itself. And then we can go through a couple of conceptual renderings. We've provided 2 different options. Now, this is my first time meeting most of you folks. You all have an opinion on how this building should look and how it should feel within the town of Auburn. So this is my first pass at it. You know, if you said, Matt, we want that one, that's exactly the building for Auburn, I'm going to tell you you're crazy, because that's not how these things are done. So please be critical, give us criticism, let us know what you like, what you don't like, so we can take that back, combine all those comments and what you liked out of the concepts we're showing you tonight, and then come back with something that really speaks to you and it is something that we can all get behind and support moving forward. So with that, let's just jump right into the plan.
Matt, do you want comments as you go, or would you like to save that for afterwards?
No, feel free to make this a conversation, please. I could sit up here and talk all night. I've done it at length here in town previously. I much prefer a conversation. So if you look at something and say that's ridiculous, or let's talk about it further, please. Let's do so. So this is the conceptual site plan. See if I can get my pointer to show up. Probably not. So as we come down Prospect Street to the right, Route 20 is down to the south end of the screen here. Top part of the plan is our apparatus bays. I'm actually going to walk on over. So Prospect Street, Route 20 here. This is where the existing restaurant is sited on the property. Now it's mostly parking off to the right. Public entry and public parking spaces to the south, right off of Prospect. Most of the living quarters, administration services, all of the public use spaces and staff spaces are housed within this wing of the building here. It's a 2-story structure off of Route 20. This is envisioned as an ingress with 20 parking spaces for the public, and then egress out on Route 20. Staff parking comes off of Route 20 or Plan North by the Dunkin' Donuts. Staff parking spaces are here. We have 48 parking spaces for general staff, 10 parking spaces directly off the entrance for administrative staff, and then 4 double deep drive-through bays. What we would say is 8 bays to house apparatus here. So there'd be 4 overhead doors, front and back, and these bays would be drive-through. And then a 5th bay that would also be a drive-through for a mechanics bay or additional storage. And then we also provided a one-way bypass for any apparatus coming off of Prospect Street or staff vehicles that want to get around to the back of the building without having to get out onto the big thoroughfares. Recognizing that part of this project is borrowing some land from the Veterans Memorial to the north in order to fit everything, we did also want to provide a small 20 parking space lot for the Veterans Memorial there, so it could be better utilized by the public as well. I would note that we have a large green space off to the side of the plan. This is envisioned right now, space plan wise, that in the future, the future police station could be constructed and built on that piece of land. Could be another municipal use in the future, but we're sort of trying to keep the site as compact to the back off of Prospect Street as we can. Any questions on the site plan right now?
So you're thinking it's one way in and out? Is that what you?
For the public?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a 2-lane, it is a 24-foot wide travel lane, so it is 2-way traffic, but the way that it sort of has to come around the building because of the site constraints, it would more likely be utilized as a one-way off Prospect and then down onto Route 20. So jumping into the floor plan, and like I said, I'll just go over basic organization first, and then zoom into the plans, because I can't read anything, and I'm a lot closer than all you folks are, so I'm sure you can't read anything either. But the general premise is off of that public parking lot is where we would be looking at Plan South. And right in the middle of the building is sort of where the public entry would be, your main public lobby. That is directly serving the administrative wing. This is where all the staff, captain's offices, the chief's office, things like that would be located. To the right of the plan is the bunking and living space for the firefighters. This is directly adjacent to the apparatus bays that just sit off to the north of the plan, allows them to quickly respond without having to negotiate stairs or fire poles or things like that have inherent risks associated with it. So it allows for a quick response time and a safe response when there is a call. To the back of this is what we call a transition zone. So current and modern fire station design trends recognize the fact that when firefighters are returning from a response, their bunker gear, the apparatus, the equipment, everything that's on the truck has been exposed to smoke, soot, hazardous chemicals, materials, things like that. They need to be brought into the station, decontaminated, and stored safely on that hot side of the station, so that we're not bringing all of those carcinogens onto the clean side of the station where the living quarters and bunking quarters are. So we create an intentional separation between the apparatus bays and the living quarters, and that's called the transition zone. In here, there's a number of spaces like their bunker gear storage. There's vestibules between the two portions of the building that allow some minor decontamination if you're just venturing back and forth between the two sides of the building. But it really allows us to provide that separation, not just physically, but also allows the HVAC system to provide positive pressurization through that space so that you're also not backdrafting into the rest of the building as well. And then beyond that is what we're calling our hot zone. That's the bays. This is where all the fire apparatus, their equipment, things like that are stored and kept and maintained. On the second floor, we've got what was originally planned as a regional dispatch and emergency operations center. So this side of the plan is where dispatch would be housed. Again, if there's ever a future need for the police station to be housed on that site, it would be able to be connected pretty seamlessly to this portion of the building so that it can serve both uses. The right side of the plan is our training wing. So this has a large training classroom. This is where their gym would be located, as well as some other amenities. Then we have our building support just behind that. So that would be above that transition zone. This is where a number of our mechanical spaces would be housed. Our main electrical room, we'd have an electrical sub room bringing the secondaries into the building down on the ground floor, but we would have a larger electrical room up on this floor as well as our main mechanical spaces. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
This might be a bad question. Why is the building crooked?
The building's at an angle because Route 20 and Prospect Street are not at a 90-degree angle to them, so they are addressing the actual frontage.
Is this a design type thing, or are you talking about space issues? I mean, I don't know if you're trying to make something fancy or.
No, it's not. In the way that they're actually structured, is the two-story space is actually parallel to Route 20.
Yeah.
The apparatus bays are parallel to Prospect Street. The structures of those would be sort of independent from each other, and then there's the building support space that sort of bridges the gap.
But all those rooms are differently sized, right? And the transition zone and the building support zone are all, each room's a different size.
Yes. Yeah, they're not programmed to be the same size. They have different uses and needs, so they require different size spaces. They fit within what we're showing here currently.
I just want to point out one thing, that some new information has sort of come to light since we first met regarding the potential for regional dispatch space. One of the trends that we're seeing across the state, really across the country when it comes to dispatch facilities, regional dispatch facilities, is kind of carving out the communications piece to make communications separate from the police department or separate from the fire department. So in conversations with some of the communities that we envisioned and that had expressed interest in joining a regional dispatch center with us. In recent discussions, none of those communities have an interest in joining a regional dispatch center that is going to sit in a police station or in a fire station. They all want the space to be a third-party, independent communication center where they're not, sort of relying on one or the other. There's several, that model exists in several regionals across the state. But there's a couple of studies that are going on right now with some communities that surround us, and that's what they're looking at as a third kind of independent building. So that does change things for us, because it sort of defeats the purpose to build out a space that we may use as a regional dispatch center if we're not going to get any communities to sign on to a regional center because it's in a fire station. So the committee will ultimately have to make a determination as to whether or not they want to eliminate that second floor space altogether or leave the space unfinished. The plan was to leave that unfinished anyway and let the state build it out. But I think that there is a conversation needs to be had about potentially steering away from that idea, because in the communities that we've spoken to, no one is interested in signing on with us regional if it's going to be in the fire station.
Who do we speak to?
Who do you speak to?
Who are the communities that we spoke to?
Well, the ones that are around us right now, Charlton, Leicester, Southbridge, Sturbridge, Spencer, those are all the ones that are immediately looking at regional centers. But none of those communities have an interest in joining a regional center
I understand that.
that sits in a police station or a fire station.
Could you elaborate on why it's not a good idea to have the dispatch station where there's a police station or a fire station? I just don't understand.
Sure. Let me come up here just so the public can. So in dispatch centers, communications has changed dramatically over the last 30 years, right? You take our current setup here in Auburn. Originally, when that station opened, there was one dispatcher. That one dispatcher was also responsible for checking on prisoners that were there. They do a good amount of administrative work for the police department, like license to carries, other types of duties. As communications has expanded and we've brought on things like emergency medical dispatch, which requires when a 911 operator answers the phone and there's a medical emergency, by law, they are required to now give aid and instruction over the telephone on how to do those things. The whole dispatch center, you saw it the day that you went up there and toured it. In 2000, when that station opened, there was one computer sitting on that desk with one computer monitor. You saw the amount of monitors that are in that room now. The technology has blown up. But in some cases, in most municipalities, and Auburn is not exempt from this, we continue to utilize the communication dispatchers in a way to augment and support administrative functions of a police department. And again, that's not just Auburn. That's what's been going on since the beginning of time. But as departments get busier, both on the police, fire, EMS side, there's a lot of focus that is taken away from the dispatchers because of the other administrative responsibilities that they have by virtue of them just being in that space. And it would really be no different, and the argument could be made that if they were put in the fire station, that the fire department would potentially have the ability to use those dispatchers to augment our window or whatever duties we have. And what everybody is realizing is that these are not just, they're not just answering the phone, right? They are providing medical intervention. Everything has become technology based in there, right down to how we're dispatched. The job has become more complex, that municipal leaders want the dispatchers focused on their core mission, which is communications for police, fire, and EMS, and not serving administrative roles. So that's why across the country and here in Massachusetts, the trend has become to treat the communication center sort of as a third service that operates independently but supports the communications of the municipality, not necessarily embedded into one organization, augmenting administrative stuff for that department.
And who's doing that around us now?
The regional centers.
Where, can you be specific?
I can't rattle off the amount of,
One, get two, one or two. I don't know any.
the city of Worcester.
Okay.
What is the benefit for a regional center, though? Is that going to affect call times or response times, or how will that work?
Well, the benefits of a regional center, it doesn't affect call times because all of the 911 calls are routed into a specific center. The calls are processed. They're turned around. The state is the one that is really pushing regional centers because say that, I think there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. The state provides what's called the PSAP, that public safety answering point, essentially the big 911 computer that costs about $1 million. The state provides that equipment. The state does not want to provide 351 PSAP. So they're encouraging municipalities to regionalize, public safety answering points so they can spend less money on the PSAPs, especially in smaller towns. Take the Brookfields, Warren, those kind of communities. The state police actually does the regional dispatch for police, fire, and EMS there. The city of Worcester does it for the town of Leicester. Leicester is embedded with the city of Worcester. So they're trying to encourage communities to get together. It doesn't translate into, regardless of where the phone is getting answered, that translates into an increase in call time. When you go out to the Midwest and in California, they do not operate the same way that we, entire counties in California and the Midwest are dispatched by a single PSAP covering 800 to 1,000 square miles. So it's just a different way of doing business. Massachusetts has always been a little slow to catch on with those kind of things, but there is an advantage to having an independent communication center that's managed by a director that's not, tied up doing other things that are taking away from their core responsibilities, which is communication specialist.
Just a quick call. So looking forward for Auburn, then it's eventually, so we would continue to dispatch from the police station until such time that we joined a regional facility wherever that might get built and by whatever town or are we looking to join a regional?
Well, I think I think this is a conversation, and we'll have to honestly check with the manager to see how much he wants this committee to weigh in on this issue. The two are kind of tied together because we're talking about space, but this is also a much larger operational conversation that ultimately is driven by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm not really sure where this conversation lies. I'm more than happy to answer questions, but I also want to make sure that we're not blurring lines.
Yeah, I guess all I wanted to understand is because originally we were talking, we might be able to do regional dispatch in this building. And now what we're saying is that's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. So the question is, or I guess the only alternative I see then is that we are either continuing to dispatch from where we are today until such time as we join a regional dispatch, or at some point down the road, we decide as a town, we're not going to go regional, but we do want to build a new dispatch center, and maybe that's, just for Auburn,
Yes.
might be there.
And that's what I was going to suggest is I think you got a couple of options. I think when we're talking about a regional center hosted here in Auburn, I don't think we're going to have the interest if it's in the fire station.
Yeah.
So ultimately what the Board of Selectmen would need to decide is, one, do we want to go regional? And if the answer is yes, then it's, okay, where are we going to do that? And if there's not interest in doing it in either the police station or the fire station, then we're going to need a third location that ultimately the state would build out for us, but we would need an alternate location. Or if we said we're not going to go regional, then the community has to decide, well, where do we want communications to sit? So does it make sense to build a new communication center in the fire department, which would free up space at the police department? But in some cases, it's part of a more global discussion because I think and the way that it would be set up here would be a little differently because the communications dispatchers would not be forward facing like they are in the police department. So they wouldn't be handling our lobby traffic. They wouldn't be doing a lot of the administrative things that they do now. So I think it would be different. But I think that's really ultimately what the conversation is.
And that's a decision we can, that could be deferred.
That could be, yeah, I mean, that could be deferred, or the board may have to weigh in on it, kind of sooner than later if we're talking about it here. Myself and the police chief have always said publicly, and I'm not letting any big secret out here because we've said this publicly before, we would be interested in entertaining the idea of a regional dispatch if we were hosting it here in the town of Auburn, because I think that there are some benefits to being the host. But it changes the conversation a little bit if we're not going to be the host. Who we get involved in is more critical than anything, right? Because you can get into an agreement with the wrong people. So I think it's a more global conversation, but I think to simplify it, if regional's off the table here, then we just have to decide whether or not we want to create a space that could be used as a dispatch center down the road, and that space could potentially be a little smaller than it's built out today because it's not regional.
Okay, thank you.
This is an important topic. I think it changes the whole design of the building.
What is the proposed square footage of the dispatch section as it sits?
Putting me on the spot with that one. I want to say 4,000 square feet, somewhere around there, give or take.
Good size space then.
And that's solely dedicated for dispatch. Is there any other rooms? I know it's not blown up, but any other rooms in there that we would need to hold on to if the dispatch is removed?
Yeah, yeah, but not in the same capacity. So let's jump ahead and I'm sorry. Seems my screen is only sharing the PowerPoint. See if I can.
I don't know how to jump ahead here.
There we go. Okay. So this is that dispatch center. What is directly serving this regional dispatch center, and this is the actual communication center here, which is envisioned for 6 positions, 6 consoles. I believe right now you guys have 3 just for the town. 2.5. There's 2 offices, one being a training office, I believe, and one being a supervisor's office. They have a small kitchenette break area. Typically, a dispatch center has its own break area within the dispatch center. You don't want dispatchers leaving the communication center to go to some other break room. You want them there in case they need to back up a call or something like that. They have a couple of their own dedicated restrooms. And then a small locker room and a small storage room. The other big space associated with this is, so I would say if we eliminated this piece of the program, those are the spaces that would go away. We've got a communications equipment room. This is the main server room that would house the PSAP. Any other associated data racks, cabling, things like that would occur here for the dispatch center. But this is also where we're doing main building distribution for all technology and equipment as well. So all the building servers would live within here as well. So that space would get smaller, not a lot, not tremendously smaller, but a portion of that would need to remain.
Through the chair, I mean, that's not, you're pretty much just talking about eliminating 3 workstations. I mean, you would still, there's still a communications director's office. Is they need their own bathrooms. I mean, they should have their own space to put their gear. I mean,
Well, that would be only if they came over, right? They might still stay at the police station as of right now then, right?
well, this would be the upgrade. They would probably come, if this were to, space were to be outfitted, and correct me if I'm wrong, chief, they would leave the police station and not have,
The discussion was that it would be fit up through the state's funding, not through town funding.
Correct. So that's
the
the
other
other
problem.
caveat, is if we were going to just build this out as a center for Auburn only, we would be on the hook for that cost.
And that would be a decision probably made, I think, after the fact in this case. I don't
Well,
know that.
no, it's like I think we have to take it to some of the discussion back to the Board of Selectmen and talk about regionals and
Yeah.
what their vision or what they want us to pursue, because if we're not looking at a dispatch center in here, that's half of the second floor, and I'd be pushing to take the rest of the second floor and drop it down to the first floor, because then you eliminate stairs, you eliminate elevators, you change some cost parameters and stuff in there, might lengthen the building out and everything, but
Yeah, but
No,
then
if
you're taking the space that they wanted to leave for future use if we do that.
I wasn't saying, so it's 4,000 square feet at $1,000 a square foot that would just be sitting idle until future use came out. I don't know.
It should be cheaper than that if we're just gonna shell the space, right, for future, where that'll be.
I suppose, yes, with no finishes and stuff,
Yeah,
right,
the-
or leave a raw space.
Yeah, I would expect, we run into the issue that happened, the chief mentioned back when they built the first one, right, of not sizing the steel correctly and providing that opportunity, so it would be a small upcharge, I would think, I would just expect the cost estimator to be able to provide us some data on that. But it sounds like from what I heard both here, it's the elimination of the regional dispatch center doesn't take away from the function of the fire department within the space. And those kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but, it sounds like we're tabling that discussion for the regional dispatch center, which sounds like the Board of Selectmen, we need to, get that input on too. But if it's not taken away from the fire department, then, I kind of like the idea of pushing it away if we're not gonna get the funding for it.
So I think there's two things that we need guidance on. One would be, are we looking to pursue regional dispatch? Maybe, yes, no, what's the thought? Because that means dispatch is moving to some third-party building. And then the second question would be, if we're not pursuing regional dispatch, is the appetite to move dispatch out of the police station to free up some space concerns there as a solution, versus building a new police station, which is the other solution, right? So, is this a candidate to alleviate some space concerns at the police station? That's not, I think, our prerogative to decide, but we would need some guidance from the Board of Selectmen, most likely, and the town manager on, what is the prevailing winds, I guess, for that, because, I think it's a logical solution that, hey, there's a big room in the police station that we could move into this new building where we have a spot for it, and not have to build a new police station for a little while, I think is pretty logical, but that's, not something that we can decide, so.
Yeah, but just through the chair, there's a whole bunch of pieces here. So even, the chief mentioned that dispatchers are probably not utilized as they should be in modern times, answering the window, checking on prisoners. There would have to be something to fill that in for the police department as well, and a discussion as to whether it's technology that greets people at the door and video phones them to the dispatch center. Are they gonna have agreements with the sheriff's department to take all their custodies away, or if they're gonna staff it with police officers, you're talking probably 9 additional police officers for 24/7 coverage, and probably, with benefits $100,000 a person, to staff that window if that needs to remain because they're on. So there's a whole bunch of pieces here. You can't just take them away and stick them in the fire station and not talk about what's the other piece.
Who's gonna run the front?
I just found something else too. The FCC gets involved in PSAPs. Federal Communications Commission gets to come in and look at things and improve things. This is way over our heads, very technical. And there's no way this committee is fashioned to handle this issue at all. Not one bit.
So are we saying there's a potential there? You bring up a good point about the move over from the police station. That could potentially torpedo, right, this project if it increases the cost by a substantial amount that we're not getting the funding for. It's a risk, right?
It would have to be a discussion, I think, with the police chief to find out exactly what his plan would be to fill that gap. whether it is-
I think what he's trying to say is that, summarize it, is that, our building costs would go up, but the manpower cost at the police department is going to go up as well, because it's you're taking people out that are being used one way, and then have to backfill that with somebody else. It may not be one for one or whatever, but it's something.
I do think we can uncouple that from the project, though, if we, basically we say, we basically have to decide, do we build out space that could be an option down the road or not, right? And we can sort of decouple that from the decision of what's the cost to move it over, equipment, people, what's the cost to build a new police station instead? There's a whole lot that's independent from this. I think our decision ultimately comes down to, do we need the unfinished space in the initial building or not, right? And so I think we can make a pretty educated set of recommendations as long as we get that feedback from the rest of the town of like, which way are we leaning on dispatch, 5-10 years from now, let's say.
I'll just say this from the fire department perspective, and then this is the last thing I'm going to say about regional dispatch. The idea originally was to house a regional dispatch center. If no one's going to come, it is not cost effective to move dispatch from the police station to the fire station. There you go. With all of those other components in place. Now the decision for the committee is ultimately, do we keep the square footage for another use or not? But if it's not going to be regional, then I don't think we should be looking to move the communication center.
Okay.
Yeah, that clears the air.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
So then with that, the 4,000 square feet, do we reutilize it, or does it go away and we change that design of that then?
That's a great question for you folks to answer. And there's a number of ways we would need to look at that. And is it, do we do the vanilla box fit out and just leave the space and just keep it empty for future use? Do we shave off a section of this space? Do we get rid of the consideration of a future use on this site and expand the building out longer and make it all one story? I think those are all valid points. They all have their cost implications. They have the usability of the site has implications. So I think there's a lot of things that that raises that need to be considered, certainly.
Tell me if I'm wrong. If you've built all one level,
Mm-hmm.
and future needs came up, couldn't you add a level?
Yeah, so we could design it such that based on the current building code today, you certainly could. Codes change. I've worked with a lot of communities that have existing buildings, and they say 30 years ago when we built this, the architect told us we could build another story on it, and
Yeah.
the codes changed, and no, you can't. So without a substantial
understand
amount
that
of
part.
work, but
Just
yeah.
basically thinking. So.
Yeah, I mean, we can
wouldn't be
upsize.
hurt-
We can
wouldn't be
upsize this.
hurting anything to
Yep.
go to one level if future needs came up in 10, 20 years, and we say, we've got the room here, let's try it.
Yeah, and we can certainly
Spread
show
out.
what that cost implication might be for, increasing steel sizes. Maybe we're not doing open web, we're not going to do open web joists for the roof structure. Maybe now we're going to be doing heavy steel. We're going to be doing a cast in place or a poured in place concrete roof deck instead of just building it out over the metal deck. So there's incremental cost increases associated with doing that, but we can certainly analyze that.
Through the chair to Matt. Also, if you left the space open, you could also marry up a building like a police department and utilize that space for offices or whatever it may be towards a new police
Certainly.
station as well, correct?
Yep.
To the committee, so looking at that space, if we build it and kind of leave it as an open shell, wouldn't that be considered planning for the future rather than thinking about a potential second floor down the road and redesigning the whole thing? Like, I'd rather see us do that than say, all right, let's now redesign the whole building, move things out, keep it on one level. I don't know, that seems,
That's more expensive.
it seems more expensive to try to plan for potentials we can't forecast.
So additionally, when discussing the potential addition of a second story to this building, the general consensus is that would be for use by the police department. Then the issue is you have police officers and prisoners and various other people needing to move through the entire fire station. I know this was discussed, I believe, through the previous plan of possibly building a building that they could add on to, but I know the select board had serious concerns about needing to have some way to segregate the access between the departments, personnel, and public entering and exiting the building. So going into this with the plan of a first floor fire department and a second floor police station will make this very difficult.
Agreed.
Well said.
Do that. Yeah, why would we would never do that. The
Well-
plan was to put it off to the side regardless, maybe connect it. You said like a connecting, in the last conversation that we had, like a connecting tunnel or hallway or something, but it'd be its own separate
Right,
building.
but right now with what they're saying with extend the fire department out, build a one-story fire department that we could then build a second story onto later. With that scenario, the second story would have to be the police department, which is not really feasible.
I think the other thing that I would keep in mind is that Auburn is very small geography-wise, so land is a space premium here, and so you really you want to look at density of your buildings. So you're going to have to build up anywhere in town because there just isn't a lot of open space like other towns would have. So I think, I don't think it's the number one concern, but I would probably look at it as, let's look at the cost, but let's build the 2 stories and leave an open section of land for future determination. Gives you a lot more flexibility than I've filled that space with a building that I could add a second floor to, but that's gonna limit what you could do with that space.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about, eliminating the whole dispatch center, and then the only thing left now is the training rooms and the fitness center. So it's not doubling the length of the building. So you're not taking up the entire site if you were to go down to 1 floor. The training then could be kind of used, envision that there'd be a way that you could multitask that one. As we saw, like Northbridge's, I mean, it's their big training room, but they also, it's open to the public and, they can schedule meetings and everything else in there and conferences and stuff and use it. But then, you could share it with the police department and stuff, that way. Instead of having to, because we have no idea what the program needs are for the police department because we're not even talking. I mean, some people may have it because they worked on the committee before. But, in terms of what's really happening, I don't know. I mean,
I think we'd need to see.
You need to see a cost, I think you
Yeah.
need to see a cost difference between putting the second floor on and extending the building, because you're adding foundations and you're adding more that way, but, I'm sure there's a way we can get a cost difference between the two. It might not be as much as we really think it is. I think making the second floor makes more sense to me, honestly, but
I agree.
There is ancillary space too, just to point out what Matt was saying before, right? All the MEPs are on the plant side.
Yep.
Right now that feed the rest of the building, that could take up a considerable amount of space,
But-
if we put that on the first floor. And then it's just a lot of travel corridors on that first floor. I think any building that I've been in, any renovation I've done, it's huge pain to build up. It's not as critical to move out, right, and take up the space. The biggest concern is the footprint that you bring up, right? How does it look from the street? How does the public perceive that?
I mean, mechanical spaces, they live on roofs all the time, so I'm not as worried about that. I think that you have a mechanical space on the other side of the garage, right?
No, no.
Isn't that you have a big square on top of the garage?
Yeah,
big
that's a number
rectangle.
of support spaces for a lot of the firematic equipment, things like that.
Okay.
And then there's a mezzanine up above that that's used for additional storage. They can use that for training, things like.
But
things
I
like
mean,
that.
it's the same type of thing. I mean, you could still be housing mechanicals up there, and have a less of an egress problem just for mechanical. You certainly don't have to have elevators and everything else.
Yeah, this is less like air handlers, fans. This is more boilers and things like that. If we went with like a VRF system, or we've even talked, HVAC systems and things like that, but where a lot of those components live within the building, not necessarily rooftop mounted type equipment.
Does
No, but it could be rooms that are accessed from the roof side. That's all I'm saying. Is it?
Sure.
It's, you know, it's on the roof of the garage areas now, or the space in between, the transition space. You could, you know, could still access it that way, and not have it, you know, when you're just part of the consideration for what we do with that second floor. We could just do half of the second floor, get rid of the whole dispatch area, and just deal with the training area and the fitness centers up there. But, you know, that's, you know.
I think the main question is that we call it the full dispatch area, right? Is if there's an opportunity for it to be used for a future use, then the cost analysis of whether we shell the space or just make that a roof and cut the second floor off at the conference room, you know, becomes more of a opportunity. But if we want to keep that segregation for future use, and we're saying, nope, segregation is the line on the left, the right side is the fire department, the left side's for future, and we don't need this space, then we could save, you know, millions of dollars by making that a roof and not fitting that out at all.
Yep.
Just through the chair, just all that stuff that is on the second floor, the communications, the community/training room, the fitness room, those are all things that should be located, again, this is from the previous committee, if we were to have some sort of future expansion for a police facility. Those are, all those components there are things that should be in a location where they could somehow connect. You wouldn't want to build another 4,000 square foot training room. You'd want to have a shared training room, community room. You'd want to have a shared fitness room. Fitness equipment is crazy expensive. I could tell you what that costs. I mean, that's, you know, and then the communications aspect there is, if we were going to retain, the Board of Selectmen chooses us to retain our identity and have our own communication center, there are components where both police and fire need to sort of have interaction with those communications personnel. So it's just, as this is laid out right now, it just doesn't seem to flow the right way for me. But you know, up in the front hand corner where it's really difficult to.
I mean, that's a part. I mean, I think you know that's part of it. You take the communication center out of it, you could slide it all to plan left on there, and then in the future, if the police station, you know, came to the next, you know, that's their second floor access gets into that stuff that, you know, maybe, you know, there's a way to divide that, you know, so you're not worried about the segregation within the police department and the fire department and stuff. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. You're right. Those are probably good shared use spaces that should be closer together for consideration for future.
When I looked at this, my assumption was that you could make a second floor connecting bridge, for lack of a better term, at the stairwell, at the upper left corner, right? So, and that leads directly into the hallway that accesses the whole second floor, so.
Yeah, that was the intent.
Yeah. But I think we have opportunity now to really look at not only that, but could you make it a two-story building that's a smaller footprint? Right? Is there an opportunity to say, hey, we're not going to build any unused space, but we've got a whole administrative, you know, section underneath this that maybe doesn't have to be that big on one floor, but could be two floors.
Yep. Yep.
And then the building, you know, shrinks.
And it straightens out.
I mean, there's, yeah.
Well, yeah.
So I'm not sure where I mean, we need some options, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Some ideas, maybe, or sketches, or I don't know. I mean,
well, we're jumping ahead on agenda items, but it was one thing I had brought up and is concerned about. I mean, it's a perfect prime real estate spot for a lot of functions. Fire stations may or may not be. I don't know. It's a tough intersection. Prospect and 20 and Prospect and Route 12. It's a short distance between the two of them. I know putting the engine bays seem like it's good to go out on Prospect Street, but that backs up all the time, both directions, waiting for lights at either Southbridge Street or Route 20. And I know, because I stop all the time, but many people don't even understand what the box is at Drury Square.
Oh my gosh,
stopping
no.
at the you know, in terms of light, and not, you know, going into that while they're, you know, waiting for the red light and stuff. So you know, concerned about response times because you got to be able to get out of there and get to where you need to go. And that's why I said I think we got to bring DOT and Mass DOT into it because you're controlling you want to control two of their intersections.
They're already controlled lights, are they not?
So through the chair, those intersections are already controlled.
Yeah, but they're not controlled like Drury Square where you can press a button and it's going
But
into a
it's
light
the
cycle
same.
to get
It's
you
the
out
same.
of there.
It's the same technology.
Yeah.
It's the same. The same thing exists. So we have control over those intersections. This comment comes up often when we talk about traffic, and when we were looking to purchase the Chuck's property, several people, brought up the dangerousness of those intersections, the Prospect and 20, Prospect and Southbridge Street. The crash data does not support that over the last 25 years. Mass DOT, over 25 years ago, made significant improvements to the 20 and Prospect Street intersection, which included widening the road to put in turning lanes. They took down a hump in the roadway that was obscuring the intersection traveling eastbound. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here today and say, right, that we haven't, had serious accidents or whatever, because I'm going to knock on some wood. But the crash data with some of the, and I'll use the word fear-mongering, with some of the fear-mongering that went on around the purchase of that property, the crash data does not support that. And when we talk about Prospect Street backing up, my next comment, and you raise the issue, is, have you been in front of the Auburn Street Fire Station on a daily basis, right? So it's the same thing. I would be opposed to having fire apparatus turning out onto Route 20. Prospect Street is, again, is the logical choice. Once we have control over the intersection and the lights turn green on Prospect Street, it starts to clear the intersection as it does now. That's a safer way than having apparatus pulling out and turning in from
One
Washington
thing you're
Street
missing though is that's high-speed traffic.
on Route
20.
That's why I wouldn't want fire apparatus pulling out onto Route 20.
Control where you go,
No, the light turns green on Prospect Street.
I know. And you get high-speed traffic coming to a screech.
Well, the lights cycle the same way. It's not like when you push the button, the light automatically turns green and red.
No,
It's not a good spot.
I'm not opposed to the spot. I mean, I think we might have to look at it traffic study wise, but your responses from the station, where are they going to? I mean, you're on the far edge of town at the station. So it's kind of where are your majority of your calls going? I mean, because Drury Square is still going to be involved in handling a lot of the rest of town, in terms of, EMS and everything else, correct? So
I thought EMS was coming here.
It's EMS is in both stations.
both stations, yeah.
Both stations responds to both sections of town
Yeah, we
consistently.
kind of covered that. I mean, we did cover it way back at the beginning that West Street's going away. This is replacing West Street, but Drury Square still stays, and Drury Square starts to act more like West Street. And this is the headquarters consolidated with all the personnel here.
We go through these
administrative
intersections.
personnel and stuff.
We go through the Prospect Street and Washington Street intersection multiple times every single day, and it's a controlled intersection.
It may turn out that it's easier if you're situated further west on the property and come out on 20 than going out on Prospect Street with the shopping mall right across the street and stuff and all the turning traffic right there.
But there's no light to stop you going towards like Auburn from 20 in Charlton. I don't know my east and westbound, but the closest lights by the Toyota dealership way back there. So
No, it's at Appleton Road, which is
Appleton and Prospect.
which is about halfway through that block between Prospect and
is that close?
yeah.
Yeah.
Through the chair, you always run the risk of MassDOT deciding they're going to put Jersey barriers up the center of 20, which would completely eliminate your.
Exactly. I mean,
20 was your egress out of the station. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get the concerns, but it's really the only logical place for egress for apparatus because it is. I mean, I drive there every week because I go to Parker Shop, right? So it's a little busy, but it's no different than Auburn Street. And in Auburn Street, you're pulling out right into in a pretty main thoroughfare basically now. Here it's a connector road. It's people that are just trying to get from 20 to 12 or go to the shopping center. Those are the only people, or they're coming out of the shopping center. Those are the only people driving on that road. I do know from back in the master plan days that was never highlighted as a problem intersection like 20 and Millbury Street, for example, and over by the mall. Those areas where the high traffic, the problem areas. So I mean, we can talk about how much we do or don't like it, but I don't know that there's really that much of a choice, because you're not going to try to pull out onto Route 20 when you're on a call.
If I could just, to the committee, I work out of the West Street Station, and it's not an issue. Prospect Street, Route 20. I respond out of the station, every day with both trucks, and Route 20 is busy, but we drive those trucks all the time, and it's really not an issue. And I would much rather pull out on a Prospect Street than Route 20. But coming up to those intersections, where we do a good job. Where I understand everybody's concerned with traffic and safety and everything, but I don't think it's as big a concern as some of you are thinking it is. We're very safe in what we do.
I'm not worried about your operations and stuff. I'm worried about everybody else in front of you.
So am I when I drive these pieces of apparatus.
I want you to get out and get to where you're responding to, and
that's what I'm saying.
In one piece.
I'm worried about everybody else too, and we do a really good job. And these intersections aren't as they are controlled by lights. They are controlled with all the other technology, and it's not as, I think, big of a concern as some of you may think.
Okay.
One thing you're forgetting is what's happened to us recently is the Mass Pike gets really crowded and people jump off on the Route 20. And because when Mass Pike is crowded now, because we don't have toll booths, they come rushing into our egress streets.
I live in Auburn too, sir.
So that's a big change from the past, plugging up our streets.
Just to add to the conversation, as somebody who specializes in designing public safety buildings, multiple means of egress off a site is number one, first and foremost, on how you're selecting a site. By egressing your apparatus out on the prospect and having two ways to get out through main thoroughfares versus isolating yourself to one that may be congested with an accident, it's much better to have that flexibility and availability. Additionally, I would highly recommend that as part of this project that we do a detailed traffic study and put in some sort of signalization work associated with setting up the construction documents. We do it regularly with a lot of these projects, with a new station going online, with a preemption system already established within the town. That should be resequenced so that when you guys are exiting out on Prospect on the South Bridge, on the 20 or 12, that it's responding to sequence those lights to clear traffic ahead of you, and then shutting down intersections as you're coming out. So I think it's a valid point, and it's something that's prudent to do as part of this project. It's not part of the project yet. If I may just walk us quickly through the floor plans in a little more detail, maybe it'll spur some more conversation. So back down to the ground floor, as you enter the vestibule, there's a modest lobby for the public to interact with, off of the chief's admin offices, which would have a reception window to anybody coming into the lobby. This is like the police station is. This is a controlled environment. It's a controlled lobby. It's not typical that you have public coming in and out in large droves. So small lobby just to deal with a few folks that are coming in. The administrative suite has a couple of offices associated with it. The first one that we're going to pop into is the walk-off room. This is directly adjacent to the vestibule and into the suite here. This is somebody that's having a medical emergency out on the street that's looking for assistance coming into the fire station. This is the first room they'll see off the vestibule. It's basically a small medical office, so that if somebody is having a medical emergency, a heart attack, they're bleeding, something like that, they can go right into this environment. Somebody from the department can directly access them, give them immediate medical aid, and then get them into an ambulance and off to a hospital or around their way. We got the deputy chief's office. In between those, there's a small meeting room for the two of them. There's a shared fire prevention office for plan reviews, things like that. In the middle of this space is a conference room for the entire administrative staff. There's 2 single-hold restrooms, a captain's office, a lieutenant's office, the training office, and then an EMS coordinator office. And that comprises the administrative suite. Moving down on the living quarters side, again, this can be either on the first floor or the second floor, but it's much safer to have them directly off of the bays on the ground floor so that they're not responding through a fire pole or downstairs. So off to the back of the building is the main staff lobby that has a small vestibule. So this is where the administrative staff and the fire department staff would be entering. We've got a series of bunks down here. There's 9 bunks and 3 officer bunks associated with this, so 12 in total. We have individual combination restroom showers, so this would be just like your bathroom would be at home. They have a study so that the firefighters can study to take exams for going up to other levels within the department. We've got their main living quarter here, which would have their dining area, a large kitchen, and their day room. Again, these are 24-hour shifts, so you're not working 24/7. You need a space to come in, relax, unwind, especially when you're coming back from a call.
Matt, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Why did you go with the single toilet shower rooms?
Because it's not all male firefighters.
No, understood.
Yep.
I guess my question would be to you guys, because you're the firefighters. Was that kind of surveyed with your female firefighters too, and they were okay with that arrangement? It's going to be like a gender neutral, basically.
Yeah.
It's basically to keep up with our ratios change all the time.
Right, but that's not good. I guess what I'm saying, from a female perspective, it's not giving a female locker room strictly for them. She's now going to be using a locker room that the guys are going to be, or a bathroom setup that the guys are going to have been using. That's my only question on that. Usually you see like women's locker rooms and the men's locker rooms.
Are they lockers?
These
well,
are
it's with the showers, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm calling it a locker room, but it's with
No,
the
no.
shower, so.
Okay.
It's a concern that has been raised in other communities in the past. The trend is trending towards more gender neutral facilities. There's been pushback on it in some communities, so I think it's certainly up. It's up to the department on their female membership and how they feel about that. For the locker component, the way the bunks are they're divided into one shared bunk for 4 shifts. So there are 4 individual lockers within each bunk room. So those would be shared as well. So hopefully you have 1 female per shift and they can have 1 bunk.
Matt, the administration could designate one of those as needed, and then just have, but in general, they could be
Certainly.
utilized in the future, but.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, we could certainly say that one of these is they could certainly designate one of the restroom shower rooms as a female only and do it that way.
The original plan for that was to eliminate the square footage of 2 separate locker rooms. That was the theory.
Yeah, I get it. I totally understand. I just want to make sure that your female firefighters are comfortable with that situation. That would be my only concern.
I think it would be fairly easy to designate one as the
Yeah,
female space.
yeah, that's a good point.
Are the 3 shower areas enough, or do you take the study and make that into a 4th?
The study's also for report writing.
How did you get to the 3 rooms based on like the number of bunks? Is that how you did it, or?
Yep.
Okay.
So when fully staffed, there's right now 9, 7 on a shift?
Well, at this station, there would be 7 members at this station.
Okay.
plus the officers.
But long-term, you would like to get to, I know you have a staffing goal.
The staffing study recommends 13.
Okay.
So this is built out this, and again, as we increase staff, not all the staff would go in this building.
Right.
So it's set up now that there would be 7 year for at Drury Square, but if we added staff, most likely we'd be adding staff to Drury Square, not to this building, to start increasing Drury Square beyond 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
And there's 7 bunk rooms at Drury Square.
right.
Matt, through the chair, how many bathrooms in the building total and showers total? I know we're focused on these 3, but I'm just curious.
the only 3 showers.
Showers would be the 3 bathrooms total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I would be Larry counting the total because you're gonna count the administrative, what you're not gonna use though, right?
I'm just saying for functionality, like, I'm assuming they're all over the building, but like even the workout area, so if you're in the
Yep.
workout area, is there a shower or a locker area up there?
There's not. There's a couple of multi-gang restrooms up here, and then there are 2 bathrooms directly serving the fitness room, but there's no shower facilities up there. So continuing on, one other thing we do have in the living quarters is a small housekeeping area. This is combination of the custodial services, but it's also department laundry and things like that for their uniforms. We have 2 transition zones, one here, which is a small transition zone, and then a larger one over here, which is along your response path. Transition zones are pretty simple. They're helping us manage the HVAC's pressurization so that it stays positively pressurized into the bays. It acts as a giant vestibular airlock. We'll have things in here like hand sanitizing stations. You know, we might have a boot wash, things like that. Just to help add another layer of decontamination as you're coming out of the hot zone into the living quarters. This transition zone in particular serves the radio room as well. So this is sort of your eyes on the street for the fire staff as they're exiting the building, making sure they're getting out safely, taking calls and managing the response. We also have a small kitchenette in here. This is not for the department use, but this is for mutual aid use. So if there is a long duration event or there's some need for mutual aid to be housed within the building, this gives them a place to touch down, have lunch, have dinner, but not require them to be out into the rest of the building itself. Support spaces we have off of the bays. We've got an EMS storage room. We've got our decon room. So this is our decontamination space. So as they're responding back from a call, if you need to do a full decontamination, like a full shower, there'll be a full shower in there, so that you're not going back into the clean side to take a shower. It'll also have your gear extractor, your gear dryers, things like that, so that the turnout gear is also being cleaned here in this space as well on the dirty side. And then we have our turnout gear storage right next to decon. So as the firefighters are coming back from a call, they go into decon, drop their gear, clean it. Once it's clean, they bring it into the turnout gear room, and then that's where it's stored until they respond back to another call. Yes.
Just thought of something. Do non-90-degree corners increase construction costs? Make sense?
This entire side of the building is typically, in the way we would envision it, is going to be all CMU, so
What's that?
concrete masonry, so block walls, like
Yep.
most of this building.
We need,
These walls are all perpendicular to each other until they get to this wall here. And again, just to further the point about the orientation of the building and why the angle is that way, if we were to straighten this out, we would have to push this entire section of the building back. We would lose quite a bit of parking spaces as a result of that.
And the odd spaces aren't furniture driven, right? Like we're not
Correct.
shoving, tables in there, which might lose some space in it if we're putting gear in there and equipment. You got to imagine that it's a good use of that space. That's kind of like an odd shape, so you don't lose that.
I know why you're doing it. I just asked the question if it increased construction costs.
For here, it would be negligible, if anything. Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate there'd be any substantial costs associated with that, if any.
Now, the housekeeping area there.
Yep.
when the firefighters come back and they need to wash their clothing and stuff, I remember that was something that, I think it was the West Street station, right? It's you have to walk through the kitchen to get to the space. Is that causing the same issue here, or is that satisfied with the decon area?
This would be for like your regular garments and things like that. Anything that you'd be coming back from a call on would be deconned here. We can put a residential washer and dryer in here in addition to the industrial one for the gear.
I see. No. So in the West Street station, when you come in, into the building, our washer and dryer is right next to our refrigerators. And if like I'm bringing laundry from my locker, I have to come past literally come through the entire station, through the kitchen, put my clothes in the wash machine. So that would actually have, if the washer and dryer is in that middle, like, housekeeping room, that would eliminate us from putting any dirty clothes or anything dirty in, like, the kitchen, the main. Yeah, because you would just go around the back way. So, yeah.
Additionally, within the bay, so this is the layout of all the different pieces that would be in here: ambulances, engine, ladder, tankers, and the like. The fifth bay here, the mechanics bay, so we're not showing any pieces of equipment in there. Additional spaces, we would have some additional storage rooms for spare gear, equipment, things like that they need to respond to calls with, service vehicles with, things like that. We have our SCBA room, so this is the self-contained breathing apparatus, sort of cleaning and servicing and filling of the tanks. So face masks are in decon. But this is essentially where a large compressor is housed that fills all their breathing tanks and services those. So that's housed in this room. They've got a workroom which has a tool chest in it and things like that for servicing the apparatus. This door is going to go over here now. We've got a compressor room, so the compressor is self-contained within its own room, and then we have a single hold restroom on this side so that if you're in your gear, you haven't deconned, you don't need to go back to the clean side to use the restroom. You can use it right in here.
Is that all ground floor inside the apparatus bay?
Yes.
Is there a mezzanine on top of that?
Yeah, so above here there would be, so there's a small stair that comes up, and there would be a mezzanine there for additional storage. Some departments use it for additional training, sort of free space. It's relatively inexpensive. You've got a 20-foot high space in there, so why not build it?
Do we have the space for the needle machine? And that's that whole hazardous materials. Would that be identified in here?
Which machine? Which piece of equipment?
I forget the name
It's
of it.
a biohazardous remediator. It's a needle grinder. It's approximately 4 feet wide by 2 feet in depth and maybe 40 inches high.
Okay, where do you want that to live?
Probably on one of the spaces in between the mechanics bay.
Okay. Yeah, we can accommodate that. Do
I mean, that just needs power.
you have a cut sheet on that, just to
Yeah.
make sure?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a dedicated room for that.
No.
Just in a clean room, not like it was in now.
So when you don't have to climb over other things to get to it.
Matt, are there any walkout doors off the apparatus floor to the rear?
There should be, and there will be, so yes. Yeah, that's a good,
Matt, through the chair, just apparatus being the most, other than the personnel being the most important thing you have. Chief, is that square footage as laid out here, is that sufficient for the apparatus that you currently have?
It is. We took a comprehensive look at our equipment, and again, understanding that Auburn Street will be open. We didn't want the original plan, like one of the plans that we looked at, you'll see like the trailer in the back there. The trailer was in the bay. It started to get a little crowded, so we kind of kept the trailer outside there. There's gonna be some space for trailers and some ancillary equipment to go in Auburn Street. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go much smaller than this, or really any smaller than this. I think we're kind of at the minimum. This is what we envision would go in there, and if there was any growth of equipment down the road, I see at some point, maybe an additional quint or something, but that would be housed at the Auburn Street station, not here.
Thank you.
Because you're going from 3 small bays here to, you would essentially gain everything that's at Auburn Street on top of this, so, which
It's
was.
gonna be a mix, so this station's
Yeah.
gonna be filled with a mix of equipment from both West Street and Auburn Street. So
Right.
there's equipment from Auburn Street that would actually be moved to this location to free up, essentially some ancillary space.
Yeah, and I mean, if you just think about it as we're moving Auburn Street to the new one and West Street to the, Auburn Street, you're gonna gain several bays,
Yeah, the
over
bays
there.
that we're gonna wind up picking up are gonna be at Auburn Street.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of things that I think are parked in the parking lot right now that should be able to go to Auburn Street.
Upstairs in your fitness room, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a couple showers up there to take some of the load off? Because I envision that fitness room being used by off-duty people as well as on-duty people, okay? So if you only got 2 showers downstairs
Right.
and you got a fitness room upstairs, great place to get stinky. I mean, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a couple showers up there?
It wouldn't be a bad idea. That's certainly something we can accommodate. It's not something that's in the program now. I would probably say, over the nearly 8 years that I've been working on this project, we have value engineered the program many times over. And so some things that would be nice to haves, we've cut back on. So, we can certainly put some of those nice to haves back in.
Yeah, but you don't look good in a cheap suit.
I think one consideration there, though, is if we do take in consideration this could be a shared space. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it could be a shared space even if the police station is there because they don't have a fitness space. It might make sense to consider, what is the cost difference, as we're
It's-
building out the
I mean, your
budget.
plumbing's already all there, so it's not gonna be a
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
cost difference.
So,
It's just space.
yeah.
You have to add a little space, right?
We got a lot of space because dispatch is going away, most likely.
Well,
A lot of showers with that space.
Shower.
I'm just saying that you're losing a lot of space, so a couple of
yeah,
extra
but you
square
could
feet.
take, I mean, you don't have that layout up, but I mean, I can't imagine if little extra space out of the gym. That gym looked like good size.
You just added 2 showers up there.
Yeah, you're just
Fill
adding
the room.
shower space,
And if
so,
somebody had to wait 10 minutes to take a shower, I'm sure they could deal with it.
well,
Yeah, I think we can probably steal a little bit of space out of furniture storage that backs up the training room and probably add a couple of showers in there.
I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is if you're adding a shower or 2 or whatever to that space, like thinking about it, how I would use that space. So if you're gonna go up there to shower after working out, that means you need to bring a bag. Well, now you need
A
somewhere to
locker room.
put the bag. So like in Northbridge, they had that small locker area, which was, now you're gonna need to build 2, gender specific or whatever. And I just think those 2 showers up there could turn into, well, now we need, a lot more space. I can see the functionality piece and it makes sense, but it's gonna lead to more.
We could.
This is my concern.
We could alternatively do, which is a pretty common practice in fire stations. So we have the 4 lockers dedicated to each bunk down below. We've done other stations where you do a shared corridor that has lockers, and then the shower bathrooms act also as your changing room. So we don't need to get into creating an actual locker room for the gym. We could just put a couple of lockers, and then you grab your stuff and head on into the restroom.
Sure, yeah. I'm just thinking functionally what would make the most sense.
It's a cascading effect. Once you go with one, you got to kind of go in with all.
Just logistically through the chair, Sean, what would, so if the 3 is sufficient for the group that's working on a day shift, where would your fire prevention person that wants to work out, your, your other administrative folks, you have a larger component during the day. I'm just thinking maybe those are the one showers that they may utilize as opposed to taking one of the two, you know, the.
Yeah,
the
right,
group.
and we want to promote that. Yeah, we want to promote health and wellness in our operation, and like you said, if the police someday, you know, connect up to us, we want that to be a space that anyone can use. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't disagree that a couple of showers would be good, but I just, you know, now we need a locker room. Even if it's on the small scale, or like you said, Matt, lockers in the corner of the gym that you can just put your stuff in and, you know, then you keep an eye on it. You're not worried about anything
Yeah, I
else.
mean, we're talking about that, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's probably 24 lockers, you know, 2 tiers that are recessed into the wall. It doesn't really take any square footage to do it, and you just grab your stuff, hop in the room, and you're on your way.
Matt, hadn't you described, I think at the previous committee, almost that they're almost pods nowadays, that it's, you kind of go in, you close the door, you hang up your stuff.
Yep.
Your shower's right there, you come out, so it's sort of a one-stop shopping, you know, you would have a locker that you could hang up uniforms and stuff, but you would get to a point where you could enter the pod and change up in privacy and shower in privacy, then come back out.
Exactly. It's like a dorm room, you know?
I guess just thinking about it, right, at headquarters, we have 3 showers now. So I get that a locker room, and we've had this conversation, I get that a locker room is gonna increase square footage. I don't think that's the best way to go, but as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm not sure that 3 is gonna be enough. I think we should
I agree.
add a 4th shower, because I'm just thinking about it now, we have 3 showers right now on Auburn Street. We're gonna combine a facility.
Study's the
more
perfect
staff,
place
and
for
we're
that.
gonna
I don't know if we
have
could
the same
utilize
amount of
another room
showers.
for your report writing or something.
So I think we should probably shoot for a 4th, because again, especially if we're gonna designate one as a female, now we're down to 2.
And you're thinking of the main living
I'm thinking
space?
of
Yeah, the main bunk
Down
area.
by the
Yeah.
bunks.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, Heather brings up a great point. If we designate one of those to be a female, now we're down to the same exact 2 showers. It's the same configuration we have now, 2 male showers and a female shower. So it almost seems like we need to add 1 more. So we have, you know, 3 male and a female, and just kind of give some flexibility to that growth.
I have a question, I guess, on the dividing wall between the training space and what was going to be dispatch. Is there any opportunity to, I guess, steal from that space to, if I think about, okay, we have a training fitness space, and we're talking about, well, we need a little bit of room for this, a little bit of room for that, and you've got a roughly 4,000 square foot, you know, dispatch that we're saying we may not need. The way it's laid out, it's kind of like 3 buildings stuck together. Is that, you know, is that a hard requirement for us? Is it hard for us to borrow everything to the first wall to the left of the main one there?
What would
Conference
happen if you
room?
Switch those spaces, Matt, if you put the classroom towards the front and the gym where the classroom is, and now the gym could share those bathroom and shower space.
You know, I'm just thinking about options there where it's like, you know, or as we talk about on the living quarter area, it's like, well, if we've got, you know, does all of administration need to be on the ground floor necessarily if we've got potentially 4,000 empty square feet above us to play with, or we shrink it, or, you know, whatever we want to do with it. I'm just structurally, you know, as we look at this, do we have, you know, it's all neatly divided up into 3 little boxes right now. Can we move the lines a little bit
Yeah.
or not, you know?
Well, there's no structure, so.
Well, but I mean, there are very thick lines and then there are thin lines.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying,
wouldn't.
right?
I wouldn't concern yourself with this line being thick.
Okay. So that's a potential then too, is, you know, it's like, okay, we need a 4th shower. The study seems like the right place, but we still do need a, you know, report writing study area. But is there other space, you know, as this, you kind of have this void at the top on the 2nd floor there that could absorb something that's in the administrative 1st floor. you know, or those kinds of things? Or is there a reconfiguration as we think about any connection point 20 years down the road? If there's a police station, is that corner, does it make sense to flip-flop and the, you know, the gym and stuff is on that end of the building, or things like that?
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah.
Pushing it down to that left side.
Matt, what is the current gym over? Below it?
The day room, kitchen area, a couple of bunks.
Because gyms tend to be loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're because of
It goes over our office, yeah.
the gym is where it is because of a number of different reasons, but having a gym over the living quarters in a standard construction wouldn't be ideal, but we would do an acoustically isolated split slab system so that it wouldn't become an issue. We'd analyze that. We'd have an acoustician come in, analyze that, and make sure that it's not going to become an issue. But they are loud when they're above.
We toured Southborough. Theirs is on the second floor. That was the first time I think we had saw something like that. And they also have a shared corridor, like you talked about. That's how the police come over to work out, and they had no complaints about anything underneath, and there are offices.
No, it's the opposite. Southborough was the one that
they did.
they made the mistake and they put it over the 911 communications center. And they said if they
Oh, all
had
right.
to do that over again, Northborough was the one that, Southborough was the one that was the opposite. So the seal and everything rattles in the 911 because they didn't do the acoustic separation. And they put it right above the communications center.
So in Northborough, is it above like the bunks? Like, kind of like this is gonna be? The one that
Well-
you said was over.
I think that wasn't that?
No,
It
Woburn
wasn't
was on the
Southborough.
second
Oh,
South-
all right,
Southborough
whichever
was-
one it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Southborough was also on the
Southborough,
second
one
floor,
that
but they
it
had
was above,
complaints.
it was above like, sort of like an ancillary space that wasn't like administration. It
Oh.
wasn't like a
Okay.
quiet, needed to be a quiet, kind of space.
Excuse me.
I think for discussion purposes, based on Greg's comments, if you were to look to try to put some administrative spaces up on the second floor, I think confidently you could probably put the chief's, the deputy, and the conference room that's on the first floor, you could put that on the second floor, and that would be the, and then with those three spaces, you'd probably still have expansion type room on the second floor, even if you would, the way that it all shook out. So if there was gonna be a consideration to move anything administratively off the first floor, I would move the chief, the deputy.
Excuse me.
The larger conference room or just the meeting space?
All right.
Both.
I would leave the smaller conference room on the first floor and put the larger one on the second floor.
Or if we're chopping off sections of the second floor and moving stuff around, I mean, I would push the wall out on the first floor west to open up you could move the administration area over a little bit further, keep it functional, because it's one of your biggest complaints is having all this. I mean, you're going to be in the same building, thank God, but being on different levels and stuff, I mean, it's better off everybody on one level for a lot of different reasons. You can just push it over because then it's only roof space, not, that you're increasing at a certain, and then you can push the living space over a little bit or whatever to create the, get a forced shower in. Because I mean, the footprint, the rectangular footprint of the first floor isn't set in stone by anything other than what the program is now. But nothing's really set at the moment. If we need more space in the living space, you can increase it and then just push the administration down a little bit, and then we're taking off part of the second floor, which is going to change the look of the building. I know. We'll figure out how to deal with that.
Would that increase the footprint of the building, you're saying?
The first floor, you might increase the footprint in the first floor a little bit, by extending it over so you can get more space in the bunk areas to add another shower or two, and then still reserving the study space and everything else. I mean, it's a beneficial space. So we don't want to be losing study space or something like that. What about moving the equipment over top of the bays, the truck bays and stuff?
We would need a third floor to do that.
Oh, because of the height difference between the buildings there.
Yeah, so the lowest that we would do apparatus bays typically is 19'4" to the bottom of the underside of joists.
Okay.
The reason being that gives you enough space to bring the ladder truck in and tip the cab and work on that truck.
Yep.
And service it. So we've done higher. I wouldn't recommend going much lower. In addition, the overhead doors are 14 foot by 14 foot, so you also need that overhead clearance to span that, get all your mechanicals. You know, they typically have fans in there. You've got your Plymouth vent rails and things like that. So it's busy. It's a busy ceiling, and we need that space to accommodate everything.
Oh, you're right.
And if we put anything on top of the bays, other than some general mechanical equipment, we're going to lose our ability to go with open web joists because we have an 84-foot span between, you know, on the short distance. And if we go to heavy steel, we're going to need to start putting some intermediate columns in, and we're trying to keep the bay space column free because that creates a lot of issues as they're responding and things like that.
Okay.
The second conference room here with the dispatch, is that no longer needed then?
So, we talked about if we're gonna if we're gonna eliminate this space, we would use this as the dividing line, so we would keep the 2 toilets in this conference room. Because this serves as the EOC, this would be an overflow conference room with the EOC.
Okay.
So I think we would separate it from here over.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because there's another conference room on the first floor, right? So that the second floor conference room is still part of the program, even if without the dispatch, or?
Yeah, if we were to move, like, the chief and the deputy, we probably could just utilize that conference room as the conference room for the second floor.
Yeah. He's talking about the training center becomes the emergency,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
station
yeah.
as well. You know, takes it away from the small conference room, police station one, puts it here, but then you have a breakout conference room. So, or if they need any smaller conferences during that time, or phones.
And how many seats, or how big is that training room? Ballpark.
Someone's probably counting them faster than I'm remembering. I think it was 75 was the last time we ran the count.
It's somewhere between 60 and 75, I thought. Yeah, 75's on the high end, it's somewhere between 60
75.
Pretty good. And did you mention restroom facilities for that, where I'm,
Yeah, they're on the left side, Kevin. Yeah, right across the hall from the conference room.
okay.
2 and 2.
Yep.
Matt, what's the room on the top right of the plan?
Over here?
Yes.
This is above the radio room, so we had a little space here, and right now we're just having it as a patio space, just an outdoor area off of the fitness. It's just a nice amenity to have. We can certainly get rid of it, close it in, and make it all fitness room. There's not a lot of fire departments typically have a little outdoor space that they can go because again they're there 24 hours a day. So the site doesn't give them somewhere sort of segregated from the public that they can do that. So this allows that.
Well, you got the back corner inside with.
Yeah.
I mean, good. They're shielded pretty well.
They
back
do,
there.
but the problem being is that like
Parking lot.
We've got the green space over here for future expansion and all that, but this is all drive. It's all asphalt.
That was an interesting piece of the Northbridge one, was that their community room and their day room kitchen area, they had a patio off the back where they could put grills and stuff, and talked about utilizing that for community events as well, grilling and such, but obviously it just seemed like a nice, I don't know how it came together, but it seemed like a good feature.
Mm-hmm. Anything else we want to talk about on the plans?
Can you just go back down to the first floor for a minute in that study? Can you just explain, like, you said you need to do reporting in that study?
Yeah.
Is it not someone that has an office?
Correct.
Okay.
So all the firefighters, they have to write their EMS reports after every run.
Oh, so every
They-
firefighter has to do that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So
So they need a place
we
to go?
want a space where they would be able to go in, use a couple computers, do the things that they have to do, and
Okay.
be done.
Yeah, I would probably sell it more as a report writing room than instead of a study.
That's really what it is,
Studying for
yeah.
promotion.
I almost wondered if it wasn't big enough.
It is a little small, but
you know, just thinking out loud, if there's, say, potential for 12 people to work there on a 24, 3 of them are probably officers. That's 9 firefighters sharing 2 spots to write reports. Not that everyone's writing a report at the same time, but just, I question the size of that. Like, maybe there should be 3.
I would add to that, though, we do have a work desk in every bunk as well. If that sways your thinking a little
If
bit.
we're allowed to use it, sure.
Yeah.
We try to keep people out of the bunks during the day, but yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as long as there's another option, I think it's fine.
You also have the radio room, so you'd have a 2-seat report room, plus you'd have the radio room. So you could, you know, potentially have, you know, 4 to 5 report writing spaces between those 2 spaces.
Where is the radio
The
room?
radio room's in the front.
Right off the kitchen.
I guess another question would be, you have multiple conference rooms, that EOC room, like, if it's not being used for other things, is there anything restricting them from going and just sitting at one of those desks or conference tables?
No, it's not, but it's really more for functionality when they go in. You know, we want to just have like the PCs where they sit and they have, you know, hammer out their reports, email them to wherever they gotta go, and then kind of leave it versus scattering it around the building, like, this is where you write the report. So I think, you know, Sean, to your point, I think two spaces in the report writing room, and then if there was overflow, they could always go down to the radio room and they could write. They could write there, because there's gonna be PCs there anyway.
Jim, Matt, can you just walk me through, if that training room is being used for a community event, where are they parking? How are they getting into the building? How do they get up to that room? Can you just sort of walk me through?
I don't know if you want to weigh in on this at all, Chief. It was my understanding that this training room would be limited capacity to public use. It would be more for fire department and police use. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, we're probably gonna outfit a conference room to be able to do cable TV, you know, for certain meetings. But it's not the intent to host like community groups in the large training room. Like, we're not gonna have weekly commitments. Because especially if the PD is gonna use it with the amount we train, it's gonna be nearly impossible to get a group or an organization that's gonna meet weekly in the room. We may offer up one of the conference rooms or for a committee to meet with cable access. Not saying that a function couldn't happen in that big space, but we're probably not going to offer it up to say the Boy Scouts are gonna use the training room every Wednesday night.
You don't see that as a available community space as a selling point when we try and go before the taxpayers to say?
I think it is, but I also think that the schedule gets extremely tight with the amount of people that request space. If we were to open that space up, we'd have people in it 5 nights a week. So, you know, I think we just have to be cautious about what we're gonna open it for, because we have the potential for every group is in there except for, you know, the people that it was designed for, you know, for training purposes.
Well, I mean, most trainings probably for police and fire would be day shift trainings. I'm just thinking evening hours, if there are community groups that are looking for space and,
Yeah, it's not something that we're opposed to. I think where we have run into problems, and it's exactly where the police department ran into problems, is when you're committing the space to groups weekly. It gets very challenging from a scheduling perspective.
Now, I do know that Camp Gleason is intended to alleviate some of that, and I don't know where things are at on that renovation. It's certainly taking longer than I think was originally anticipated, but
I believe there's actually an update going on at the meeting the select board is having right now on that.
okay.
I think it was on the agenda, if I remember correctly.
I think the intent is to make it available to the community, but we have run into problems in the past at both police and fire with weekly commitments, because there's so much going on that we're just not able to, with the amount of groups that want to come in. So I think it will be an available space, but, you know, we're probably gonna have to say no to those groups to say, hey, can we meet here every Tuesday from 6 to 8?
I just think it's a huge selling point for the taxpayers.
I agree. And,
To say we have
you know,
a
have it
75
open-
seat,
Yep. Oh, for sure, there's definitely functions.
Auburn
and
Youth and
things
Family
that-
Services is having a, yearly meeting events,
That kind of stuff, I absolutely see the use on. I think where we get nervous only because we've seen the problems of those weekly commitments.
I think the question is valid, though.
Access
How would the access,
The elevator.
Yeah, so there would be elevator access off of the lobby to get you up there.
sorry, I'm kind of at an angle. Where's the lobby starting where?
Oops, sorry,
Between the two.
Right there.
right here.
Yep.
So the elevator's right here. That brings you right up outside the training room to where those bathrooms are, sort of a second story lobby. In terms of where people are going to park, so we were keeping the site plan in this iteration really limited to the land development as much as we could at this phase. But in our phasing plan that we had shown a little over a year ago when we were first starting to look at this parcel, we essentially had the police station site here and then extended the parking linearly across that entire thing. That stretch, and I think we can accommodate, close to 100 parking spaces, as you stretch that out, which would give you enough, ample amount of parking for the training room function. So, at this phase, we could certainly extend that bank of parking to accommodate that.
Chief, would you envision the EOC going there?
Yes, the EOC will be in the training room.
which would then free up the room at the police station as well, so, I mean, that's a series of dominoes in terms of trying to solve a lot of problems with one building.
Matt, this might be a dumb question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. The road on the left side of the screen that splits 20 and 12, what's the function of that road?
That's an existing access road.
That's the existing, is that what the fire
come in,
department would
right?
use to get back in if they're coming from Southbridge Street? Like how does that?
Yeah, they can, yeah, so, I don't want to speak for the chief on how they're going to coordinate their response, their return response route, but typically, even though they're called drive-through bays, we typically are driving through them. It's to allow stacking for a response linearly off to a single response route or back-to-back so you can respond to multiple directions. In this case, we're stacking and responding out to Prospect. Your frontline pieces, if there's a stacked vehicle still behind it, you would be still coming back on Prospect and backing in, similarly to what they do
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Is that the reason
If
I
they,
question?
if they want to bring so this would be one way, so that they would be able to respond back in without having to widen it.
Is there something that's gonna limit the public's access through there? Cause that'll end up becoming
Nobody drives on that today. It's actually there and nobody remembers it's there. It's right next to the Dunkin' Donuts. It's when you park and you're like, what is this strip of asphalt? It's that street.
I live less than a mile from it. I didn't know until today it went all the way through. Like,
Yeah.
it barely looks like a road.
Yeah, it's,
Well, because it kind of snakes around the
Yeah.
building out front, from the 20 side, so you don't see it, but.
So we don't wanna do any improvements to it.
We can do some we would plan on doing some improvements, repaving and things like that. We don't want to do any improvements beyond the limit of disturbance because a lot of that is within the wetland buffer.
So you would resurface all that?
Yeah.
So Matt, just again, that public parking, their egress would be only egress would be under Route 20.
Yep.
And they would have to be right turn only there.
Yeah.
Double solid on Route 20, so they can't make a left-hand turn on there. They have to be right
Yep.
only. With no options to use that road that was just described to make their way up to Southbridge should they desire.
We can study the feasibility of that if we feel that it's a practical need. Yeah.
So the road width gets tight behind the building, but we'll have some flexibility when the building's not there anymore. But at the widest sort of part of that road, you're close to the 18 feet that you would need to make it you know, kind of a two-lane road, so I think the space, if it's not there, by just kind of encroaching closer to that retaining wall, you would have the 18 feet you would need on that connector road if you chose to make it basically just another way to kind of go out the back or whatever. The space is there to do that.
Well, it becomes a viable access if you have a right turn only coming out onto 20, okay, I know exactly what's gonna happen. They're gonna go left. They're gonna go left.
They turn into the car dealerships.
They go left out of Chuck's now, so I don't disagree.
I'm sure the town's gonna put right turn only signs and do
Well, I
everything they
know,
can
which
to.
should
be, right.
But if there was another option, okay, to get them out, okay, to go the other direction.
Or to get them back onto Prospect Street, which is
another option, yes, to.
you know, I was wondering if you slid the parking lot over a little bit and had green space on the corner, does that give you a natural drive that you could have bi-directional traffic out of there? I don't know, but it's,
I would, so again, I want to just make sure that, you know, this plan was derived as maintaining the phasing of allowing the police station to occupy the site. If that future use is something that we don't need to concern ourselves with, we would probably change the way that the parking arrangement is coming off of Prospect Street and that drive. I mean, primarily, we're trying to keep it as far back from the intersection as we can, which is why it sort of swoops around here. But that's not to say that we wouldn't pull this parking down a little bit, lose the potential for a couple of spaces to allow this to work a little bit better, to gain access back to Prospect, and then cut this off from the public so that they don't have access to the back of the station.
Can we ask for a second scenario to do just that, so we can see it?
Yeah.
So I think it might come up.
I think it may make sense to do that regardless.
Right. But I think you gotta,
Taking a left there is gonna be not great either.
that's no different than coming out of Chuck's.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have to work the lights.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I've done that left turn out of Chuck's.
just gotta wait.
Yeah, or do the Rhode Island left, where you just creep out and block traffic until someone
I
lets you
hate
go.
when people do
So,
that.
I can say
Go
that.
left, look right.
Yeah. So,
I think that public parking area should be bigger.
Yes.
Is there a radio tower on this site?
There is currently not a plan for a radio tower on it. The radios would go on the roof, but that is also something that I think when we do as you know, the communication piece to this is kind of separate. I think we really have to talk about the need, you know, especially going to simulcast between Prospect, Leicester Street. I think we gotta talk about whether or not a radio tower is needed, but right now, there is no plan on here on where the radio
So
tower.
you need communications for your District 7 stuff and all that, okay?
Right, I think the plan was to do it, you know, kind of roof mounted, but I think we have to talk about the communications in terms of whether or not a small radio tower like we have on Auburn Street is.
I would suggest, okay, that we fiberize it and put it up on Tank 2 at Prospect Street and have no antennas on the building.
Even still, typically, what is preferred to do is to have a redundant system, so you typically would have microwave repeaters or some sort of antenna repeater in addition to a hardline fiber connection. Because if that fiber connection goes down, you've lost your connectivity to the building. So it's always good to have two systems.
Well, our fiber going by that building goes two ways, bi-directional, two routes. So we could always lose one
Yep.
and have the other.
Yeah, for example, like if this was going to be the PSAP, you typically have to have at least two fiber providers for the building in case one fiber provider goes down.
What about air? Communications? No fiber, no cables, air, antenna. Isn't that a backup?
Yes. Yeah, it
Radio
is.
waves. We still use that? Do we still need it?
No, but the communication systems that the town is installing now for fire and is envisioning for police, okay, are multiple systems, okay, using what's called simulcast.
Yep.
So they transmit from multiple locations, Packagug School, Leicester Street, Prospect Street, and used to be Rochdale Street, so any one of those can fail, and they're all connected on fiber. So they're fully redundant. So if the fire department should lose their console, with the way their system is set up, any handheld portable anywhere in town can dispatch from, because they're on the network. So ideally, your radio console is connected by fiber, but if that goes away, okay, you can dispatch by a radio without having and the thought of putting fiber, because the fiber ring for the town now goes up Prospect Street and up Route 20. Okay, we have a bi-directional ring, so the antennas could be put on pretty much any town building, okay, and still get there by fiber.
That must be old fashioned. I still want a radio antenna to back up things.
Well, I mean, the truck pulls out of the station and he talks to everybody, and he doesn't have connection on fiber, okay? So the same thing as having a handheld in the station. With the network that's being installed now, there's really no need for BDAs or anything like that inside the fire station, because it's literally in line of sight from multiple locations.
And there'll actually be another simulcast site with the 40B housing project going up at the end of Blaker Street. There's actually gonna be another simulcast site at that location as well, in lieu of BDA.
Which street? Did you say Albert? Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, is there anything on the upcoming building code changes that would drastically change any of this? Everywhere else?
Just hit the new cycle.
Nope. Just the energy code.
Which we already passed the last step.
Yeah, I know we talked about it and then kind of got on a different topic, but the 20 spaces for public, I know we talked about the community room being, a spot that maybe people would utilize someday or whatever, or the training room rather. Is there a way to extend that so that holds like 40 cars without really impacting what you're trying to do there?
Yeah. Like I said, we had envisioned with the police station addition that bar of parking would extend all the way across the frontage. So we can just do that now.
Do you have that, or are you starting to encroach on the non-permeable surface space?
Well, no, we'll have to. The beauty of the existing site is it's pretty much fully paved, so we're actually going to have more green space now than I think is there existing. But we'll have to, as we develop the design, come up with a town compliant and state compliant stormwater management system, and it's probably gonna deal with some sort of stormwater retention on site and things like that. So increasing the impervious surface, yes, will have an impact on that, but we're going to be managing and dealing with it irregardless.
I also think if we think about sidewalk design and Prospect Street there, you do have the 20 spots at the Veterans Memorial as well. If you're talking about, hey, we're having a big event and we're going to have a whole bunch of people here, you have that available. I don't know how many of the back spots would really be in use, for example, at night. You think about the existing Auburn Street station and there's public and, there's not like designated private parking there for everybody. And then, of course, if you built sidewalks and signals, you always have across the street to consider, and I think that has to be a consideration, right? So you have a full shopping center across the street.
Just through the chair, I don't want to jump off. We've got an agenda, and with Matt's presentation. I think, are we going to jump into site issues, or
Yeah.
are we sort of kind of in between?
Yeah, we're kind of been going back and forth in between it. I think, Matt, you need to get through the rest of your presentation because I think you had some exterior stuff that you wanted to
Sure.
just kind of go over and.
That'd be great, yeah. And obviously the building form is going to change, so these aren't necessarily reflective of the architecture you're going to see next time we meet. But we did want to just come up with a couple of options just to really get your feel for it and how you feel this is, whether or not the architecture is appropriate. So we have one that's a little bit more New England traditional, one that's just a slightly bit more modern, but they're both sort of they're not too far over the top. So this is looking at as you come in that drive that winds around from Prospect Street into that public parking area. So that's your public parking area here. Apparatus bays are off to the right. So you're looking into some of the living space down below, the fitness room up above, and then the training room as we move down. So keeping it, rather traditional at the apparatus bays with red brick, regular glass, full glass overhead doors. And then a majority of the exterior treatment would be some clapboard, some fiber cement clapboard siding down below, and then maybe some board and batten up at the gable ends. We've got a couple of larger window projections out at the fitness room, at the main entry, and at the training room. Those are some, larger spaces that like having a lot more natural daylight, views out, things like that. Brick water table around the base of the building. And then as we come around to the entry, again, more of that similar architecture down in the bunks, punched windows, and then those larger window projections up above for the fitness and training room. And then similar smaller windows in sort of larger recesses for the administrative areas and in what would have been dispatch here as well. But trying to keep it a little bit more traditional in some of the vocabulary with the brick water table, a little bit more brick on some of the more utility spaces, and then fiber cement siding and board and batten being the major players here. Both schemes are going to have a standing seam metal roof. We could always go to a shingle or something like that if it's a value engineering thing. But for me, if I'm building a new municipal building, I want the roof to last longer than the bond. So we normally start with the standing seam metal roof for that as well. The second option, this is just a little bit more brick, some of the same articulation throughout the building. But we're predominantly brick. We've got a little bit of board and batten up high on the apparatus space. This has a little bit taller parapet wall. And then we're sort of framing out some of our bigger openings into more of a curtain wall grouping that you see here with again, the fitness room up above, and then the day room and living quarters down below. And then as we turn the corner, again, those punched openings into the brick, a lot of the same architectural elements here, but we're really just changing up some of the materials. And then off to the left where the administrative wing is and the dispatch center up above, that would be more of an insulated metal panel exterior there, rather than the hardy plank or the clapboard look. So just two different aesthetics. This one, to break up the brick, we're also landing the building on sort of a brownstone base, so brownstone water table and sort of a split face brownstone base at the bottom. So sort of harkens back to some of the more traditional New England architectural stylings, but just a little bit more modern in the way that we're treating it.
Matt, is the standing seam roof, is there a driver on the inside of that, why we didn't go with a parapet style wall like you did at the apparatus base throughout, or was it exterior driven?
Which,
like the why we have a pitched roof there?
Yeah.
Above.
Aesthetics.
instead of a flat roof, just aesthetics. Every flat roof I've ever met has had a leak in it. So where we can keep them pitched where we as much as possible. That's just going to be less maintenance for you. The apparatus bays, it's just such a big mass. You can design it with a gabled roof or a pitched roof. They become massive. They become really, really big. There's ways to break down the scale of it, but it's a massive pitched roof.
The only reason I bring it up is, like, I think, I'm over 2 on my Auburn history tonight, but the surrounding buildings around this area, I'm thinking mostly all flat, right? Like all industrial type buildings. You know, obviously Chuck's was the exception there, but, that's the only reason I bring it up is, you know, this, if there's an opportunity there, and I don't know if that's a potential savings for the project.
Yeah.
But if it does cause quality concerns, you know, it's something for the team to consider too.
No, I think it's a fine point, and I think it's really up to the committee about what they feel is appropriate. I don't necessarily. I can certainly give you a design with a flat roof throughout that'll work pretty well. We're also the zoning requirements aren't written such that a gabled roof is impacted by the building height. We have a pretty low restriction in this area. I think it's 30 feet to the bottom of truss, which is a unique thing. I haven't read that in a lot of zoning regulations here, so we can
Apply
make
for a variance for that, though, if we chose.
certainly. I'm going to start in compliance before I start going through variances, though.
Can that attic space be used for extra light storage?
Sure. Yeah, we can design it so that it can be used for storage. We can put mechanical equipment up there. We did both the Sutton Police Station and the Wilbraham Police Station. Those are wood frame buildings, so a little bit different. But we did the whole gable out of an attic truss. So attic truss is sort of 2 trusses that sit next to a box, and then the box is wide open all the way down. So we called it the bowling alley approach, and then we can utilize all that space, basically free space, up there. So there's advantages to that as well.
I think
You
it,
mentioned green and the roof and solar, any of that stuff come into play as to, how does that,
Yeah, I mean, we could put solar on a pitched roof. We can put it on a flat roof. You can increase the yield of your solar field on a flat roof because you're not restricted to just one side of it. So when we're looking, if we want to talk about maximizing solar capacity, then flat roof would be the way to go.
but you've got a giant apparatus bay flat roof that,
no, I just meant,
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
the green standards and energy rebates through the state and things of that nature.
There's
Just
already a portion of the roof that'll be dedicated to hold the solar panels.
The building code requires us to design the roof structure to hold
To hold
solar
it,
panels,
correct.
yes.
Yeah.
so, and I think in
So
terms of-
we'll have conduit pathways to the building for future solar. We'll have the stub ups through the roof. We'll have the panel boards already put into the building, so.
Include on the flat roof too?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so when it comes time to do solar, because most of the time municipalities don't buy solar panels, they enter a PPA, a power purchase agreement, and then lease the panels out. It's a lot less expensive. Some do buy it, but I rarely have control over that, so I want to provision it as best as I can. So these guys come in, plop them on the roof, run the cabling, put everything into the switch gear with a transfer switch, and call it a day.
in terms of characteristic of the surrounding area, though, you're really only talking to the shopping center across the street and the Dunkin' Donuts, because it's wetlands to the one side, and it's the car lot and up on the hill, and then empty space on the other
I was
intersection.
thinking
So
it's
yeah,
that whole Route 20 corridor,
It-
right? Like,
yeah.
like, you know, as we drive.
To me, it doesn't scream fire station. When you have a fire station in the back, and then you have it looks like a medical office building on the front side. Not a fan of the big gabled pitched roof. I think you can do more with parapets and flat, but my personal opinion. But
what if they got a Dalmatian?
I mean, it kind of mimics
like it.
fire headquarters now. We have a gable roof on the left-hand side and then a flat roof over the apparatus.
Yeah, it's a challenging context because you're looking at the town's municipal building stock, which is scattered throughout town and sort of reflects the characters of the neighborhood that it's put in. And then we're sort of somewhere in the middle with, strip malls and shopping centers and in a hotel and things like that. And it's, do you try to build off of the cues of the surrounding context? Do you bring in some elements of the municipal building stock? Or do you try to set a character that sets the tone for the neighborhood moving forward into the future?
Plus, you got the auto mile there,
Right.
so those buildings are not in this fashion at all.
Yeah, I definitely like the brick. I think, to your point, brick means fire station, you know, and go to the.
But brick also means money.
I like that.
Durability.
I'd rather see stone opposed to any of the clapboard stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Just look at the police station after 20 years, you
Yeah.
know?
I think we gotta be thinking of this as a 100-year building, so, I think stone and brick whenever we can, and then if we get a number we don't like, then we work it back, right? I mean,
Yep.
Is there cost savings to go to flat roof and parapet versus what you have here, one way or another, up or down?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would say that the gabled roof is going to be slightly more expensive
Yeah, more roof area.
because you're buying trusses instead of joists.
You have to have,
Buying
you know,
wood truss
plumbing,
opposed to steel
drainage on the
joists, right?
We also have more roof area and stuff.
We would no. This would be a steel truss. This is because of the size of it and it being a public safety building. So, getting into the structure. So, police and fire stations are under the building code, what's called a risk category 4 structure. Basically, everything else in the building code is allowed to fall down except for those and hospitals. So, we need to design this building as if it was experiencing seismic and wind loads that they would experience out on the Cape. So the structure has to be more robust. So when we get into wood framing these, which we've done, your allowable building area shrinks significantly, so you can only make a building that's yay big. But also the seismic connection details that you need to engineer for a wood frame building are very heavy, very expensive. And then we need to provide a whole bunch of fire ratings that you wouldn't otherwise need. So right now, this is a non-combustible construction, the entire building. That's how I would recommend it. It's going to actually cost you less money in the long run.
On the savings side, we've seen on some of the larger, like schools, for example, have run through this exercise a lot. And while you have probably savings in the material and install, I think someone brought up a point, area, surface area decreases, you have to add the plumbing systems to get the water now out of the flat roof, right? So that adds a little bit of cost there. So it's not like, I don't think it's easy to say one way or the other, but there's definitely some pluses and minuses there.
What is the life expectancy out of the flat roof opposed to the pitch?
So most flat roofs, so there's a few different systems you can go with. They range from 15 to 25-year warranties, depending on what
so
we
I
go
guess
with.
what I'm getting
Standing
at.
seam metal roof, you're typically getting 50 years out of it.
So it's like double. You know, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, we have to consider that too. On the gable end, we may put a little more, money up front, but we're gonna get more time out of that. And I agree with you, less leaks, and to his point, less plumbing.
Unless you're gonna put equipment on the roof, I don't see the need of a flat roof up there for that. Pitch roof in the end is the longevity of it.
Yep.
And I think it breaks it up. That'd be a
No, I
big
agree.
building to look, you'd think you're looking at
Well,
parking
your
shop.
utilities are inside, so you're not using the use roof space for any of that, so I like the gable on that.
Yeah.
Well, if we take off half the second floor, it may change their thoughts too as to how they want to do it, or it may come back with other suggestions. So,
Now you got us sold on this design, though. Looks good, you know? If you chop it down, it's not gonna look anything like that.
I don't know if I care for the
That's
front
impressive.
windows.
One floor's gonna look weak. We were also asked to look into the future too, right? So, we're not going outside of our purview to consider the second floor. It's been in the plans since the beginning.
Mhm.
It's only recently that our plans have changed slightly. Because we found and we don't know that that's forever either. We haven't found anybody that wants to do a regional.
That could change tomorrow
Right.
if they see the space.
Exactly. And when they consider what their costs are gonna be. I don't know. How many towns have EMS in the fire station around us?
A around us, everybody, so within Massachusetts Fire District 7, which comprises the 28 cities and towns in southern Worcester County, which Auburn is a part of, over 90% of fire-based EMS.
So Millbury's the exception to that?
Yep, Millbury, Sutton, and Grafton,
Yep.
and the town of North Brookfield and Spencer. So there's 5 communities out of the 28. And 2 of those services are still municipal services, they're just third-party municipal services.
Okay.
Is that because they're part-time? Like, they're not a full-time fire department, correct?
Right.
Millbury still houses the private ambulance company in their station.
As does
Just the way
Sutton
they've done
and
it.
Grafton.
Yeah.
All 3 still house it.
Is this presentation available online or for us to look at?
Yeah, I will share the PDF with the chief. I would assume that it probably gets wrapped up into your minutes, so I'll send him the PDF in the
Is
morning.
that the one that you sent today, Matt?
It's the one I sent today, yeah.
So the chair has that.
I would say
Oh, we're
just,
gonna put it up on, is IT gonna put it up on our
Well,
our site?
I guess that's up to the committee. I guess what I would just ask to ponder is.
Yeah, it's a lot of
You already
commi-
know that you're gonna make
You're right.
changes to this option. Do you wanna present this?
Point taken.
well, I think we could distribute with the meeting
Yeah,
minutes.
with the, yeah.
Nobody's pushing us to do that, right?
I think in consideration of the second floor space, just keep in mind that having the unfinished space gives you the opportunity if the building department needs more space for some reason, Board of Health, someone else besides the fire department, if you wanted to put in that space, you could build some offices pretty
Would you
easy.
want to bring other divisions into your space? We had this.
Not necessarily, but like the Northbridge model, having, a one-stop shop for somebody coming in for permits, that's not a terrible option. But I think just having the space available for any kind of future growth, whether it's adding the police station on and putting administrative offices for the police department over that wing, or even growth for us somewhere that you don't expect when it comes to technology and the changes of the fire service. I think it's short-sighted to not build a space which is really small overall. So I just think something to consider.
Yeah, I think I would just like to see the cost difference. I mean, that's what
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to. It's like, oh, are we talking, because eventually, this has to go to vote, and people have to look at the price tag and the project and say, yeah, that seems like the right amount of money for what we're gonna get, and it seems like we're getting what we need and not a bunch of extras, which everybody's worried about, we're gonna overbuild it, right?
Right.
So we just have to balance out and just determine, is that, what does the number look like? Is that, we see a number and say, we gotta figure out a way to get it down. Is that a viable option to say, hey, yeah, we can just lose that, and get it down somewhere? Or is it like, well, we should probably look to lose somewhere else because the difference is small, right? So we just need to know kind of what are we talking about in terms of impact.
And if we did leave the dead space up there, would you want to reconfigure that second floor differently so that space is in a different spot, or for how you may think I want to use this in the future, opposed to just, it's 4,000 square feet, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'd venture to guess if we left empty space, the fire department would find a way to utilize it.
No, right, but would you want the upstairs to flow differently, knowing that that's never going to be dispatch? So we would move stuff around and maybe have random empty spots in other spots to, just planning to make your future an easier access, if we're gonna plan for that way.
I just want to follow up and clarify one thing, because it was said earlier in the night, and I think it was misinterpreted, but it's been said, and Glenn just said it again. The space, we'll just call that 4,000 square feet. I don't think that it was ever the intent to have any portion of the police department in the fire department. I think that was misinterpreted earlier, and it just kind of, it carried on. If, to Scott's point, if there was any other department that was gonna go in that space for future growth, it makes more sense to put the building department and the health department in there than it does the police department. It makes no sense to have the police department infringe on any portion of the fire department. Their needs are completely different, the security's completely different, it's a whole nother animal. So I think, again, just to clarify, if it's gonna be open space for future use, I think it would be some other municipal use or department outside of the police department. I just wanna clarify that, because I've heard it like a few different times tonight. I don't think there should be any consideration for the police to occupy any part of this building. If anything, we're talking about attachments or abutting with a
Right.
corridor to, not actually utilizing space inside the walls.
Mr. Chairman, if that's a good segue to go to number 4 on the agenda for the site and locations, and Matt's presentation is.
Yeah, if there's no other,
Most of those questions, I think, are gonna go bounce off Matt in some way, shape, or form on that 4th agenda item anyhow.
yeah. So far, we have a couple takeaways on the presentation at hand. Is we're gonna have to reach out to town manager and board of selectmen and decide about the dispatch space and get the feedback on what they think on that, so we can figure out where we're going there. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one that we need to wrangle and help us with. So, yeah, we could move into the site issues, our 4th agenda item. I know we've covered some of it. We talked about traffic. We talked about building location on the site. I don't know if that was my concerns. I mean, I think Matt did comment that, at some point we are going to do full traffic studies around, the site. Gonna have, updated ones and stuff. That's definitely going to be needed. I mean, I think I know everybody hates it, but I think we have to engage MassDOT sooner than later, because 1, it takes a long time to go through them, and 2, they may throw some wrenches that we're not expecting.
The planning board is gonna require it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're also closing and opening up curb cuts along. We're closing a curb cut, so we're gonna have to permit it anyway with MassDOT.
Right. And those.
The traffic study usually take turnaround.
I can get you that information. I don't know. Fussin O'Neill is our civil and traffic engineer, so I can get an estimated time frame on that and a cost if you'd like.
That might dive into the OPM conversation,
I was
when
gonna
they get on board
Yep.
for that, but, if that turnaround time with MassDOT ends up extending past the vote, and that we want that information before the vote, then it's something worth considering. Thank you.
Other site issues, concerns that people.
I'll just to kind of bring up sort of what I had brought up at our previous meeting in the less than ideal space across the way. So, having been on the Public Safety Committee, certainly there was definitely that committee determined there was a need for both police and fire facilities. We understand certainly why the police component is put on the back burner for the moment, but it's not, it's not out of the kitchen. It's, the tour the other day really focused on the communications center, had the police chief been there and showing you the rest of the facility and their desire to move towards accreditation. That facility is in rough shape as well. So I think anything that we do as a committee here for this project, and I think the fire programming that we just saw, I think is great. It's met all the needs that the chief has outlined to us throughout the years, as well as what we saw in Northbridge. But I do think we need to look for the future. I think we only have to look to the current Auburn Police Station and say whoever was on that committee, if there was a committee, didn't really look to the future for that site location, because they are on a slice of pizza that they cannot. There's no place to go.
Yep.
There is no room to go. So I just think as a group, we just need to look at, what is the future? And if it means, I know that green space, Matt, you've indicated could be for possible use, but I've talked to some folks at the fire department that have said they feel like they was sort of an afterthought being stuck on the back of the property and maybe connect some way in the future. It really wasn't, being thought of as a future location, ideal location for them. And I understand, we've got the property we've currently purchased. That's all we can really work with at the moment. But, is there a different way that we could outlay this building? Just stuff that we saw tonight, like the training room slash community room is sort of at the front half. You'd have to get through fire administration and other components to get, if the police department were to be attached, to utilize that training room. The fitness center, again, fitness centers are, probably, I don't know how many square footage you had there. You know,
1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet. So you're probably just rough off the top of my head, $150,000 for equipment alone. We wouldn't want to build a police department that needed their own fitness space at a cost of equipment alone of another $150,000. So those are places I think we should be looking for shared spots. And I don't know how to lay it out, Matt. That is your world. But I do think we should be looking more to the future. And if it means that the fire, the equipment apparatus bays come to this side, and maybe the building ends up on the other side of it, so that there could be an attachment somehow closer to the Dunkin' Donuts property and the Veterans Park there. Maybe get set back a little bit further. I don't really know. I mean, I sketched some stuff out. I went on the maps online and I blew it up as large as I could and traced it out off of my off of an iPad and played around with it a little bit. But I just don't know that the current administrative building close to Route 20 really gives us a lot of flexibility if we're talking for the future connection, other than putting the police department at that rear of the lot. And then how does all their infrastructure and vehicles in and out and people being bailed out and people coming in for services, how does that really connect? That's my biggest concern, is we're gonna walk away from this with an ideal fire location, but in the future, is it really gonna be the ideal location to add on a future police facility?
Can you talk a little bit about the conversation that we had with the Board of Selectmen regarding the connection of the building a few decades apart? You know what I mean? Like, if it was a 4-year, if we were gonna connect it 4 years from now, that makes sense.
Yeah.
15 to 20, it does. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's important.
Now it's tied to all your
I'm trying to recall that conversation.
So we had talked, when we were at the selectmen's meeting, we were talking about the potential to connect the facilities together, the shared spaces.
Yeah.
But you and Jeff had brought up that if that was gonna be within the next 5 years, that makes sense. But to try to connect a 20-year-old building
Yeah.
to a new structure.
Right. Yeah, and that again has to get, that goes back to the changing building codes and some complications with that we might be planning for something in the future that we don't necessarily have a crystal ball to say that it will be actually feasible 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But also so this isn't something new. This was presented to the Public Safety Building Committee and the Select Board way back when. This is sort of the phased plan. This is sort of the all encumbered police and fire habiting this parcel. And this is based on the fire department's program for their headquarters building and the police department's program for their building, with some shared spaces and some coordination between the two. Both programs are set to be forward facing, right? So we're not going to sit here and say, you looked at the bunks, right? There are 13 bunks because that's based on a utilization study that the fire department had conducted and said, in the future, this is where you need to have your staffing levels, right? So we didn't program these buildings for today. They're programmed out to accommodate growth. If we built the police station 20 years down the road, I'm just, who's to say that program hasn't changed 20 years into the future, right? When they built the police station currently, that was in the 90s. Policing was significantly different in 1990 than it is today. Technology's changed. The way that they manage their chain of custody with detainees, with evidence, the way that they interface with the public, none of it's the same as it was 30 or 40 years ago. So we can plan as much as we want to, but nothing's to say that 20 or 30 years down the road that the program that we developed for the police station doesn't significantly change to the point where this doesn't work anyway. So we can do all the planning and forethought to make sure that the site is accommodating, but we can't guarantee that in 20 or 30 years that it's still going to accommodate the needs of the police department at that point, and then another 50 or so years into the future. And I wanted to bring this up just to highlight the fact that based on today's program for both uses, we're maximizing the site. with limited room for growth once they're both there.
That's what you should do. That's all we can do.
Right.
So I've been mulling over things like, the questions like, how do you make the two work together? And what I landed on today is the apparatus floor has to be where the apparatus floor is. It's gotta be in the middle of the street. You can't move it. You can't, like, I thought, could you mirror it, flip-flop it, right? But then you can't have the apparatus that close to the intersection, right? So now you're stuck with, you know, that's where that has to be. Where can I put the rest of the functionality? So it has to be south of the apparatus. Could we flip-flop, you know, the gym and the training room around from what was the dispatch center? Maybe. I mean, that's something for consideration. But I think at the end of the day, you're kind of limited, sort of just because of where the parcel is and the shape and size of it, right? You know, could it be a different shape? Yeah, you know. But I don't see, like, you know, do you go closer to Route 20, for example, and maybe not have it L-shaped, but then you're talking about how do I get people into the, you know, public side, right? So, you know, I think that the nature of the parcel just kind of dictates roughly what we see there from a, you know, at least from a site planning, you know, perspective, give or take, you know, fiddling around with some of the things that, you know, we've talked about today. Because, yeah, one of the things that I think about a lot is we don't have a really good public entrance in this design. I mean, there is one, but it feels like an afterthought a little bit, right? And I get it, right? It's divided into 3 zones, and the entry is you know, where it probably needs to be. But it doesn't just scream like this is the front of the entrance, right? And so maybe there's some, you know, considerations like that we could think about as well.
You want
But-
to come in off of Route 20?
No. Yeah, I mean, well,
That's what they do now to go in the trucks.
No, but like lobby area, I think he's saying that lobby area doesn't have, I think you would definitely
Doesn't
assign.
scream front of the building.
Doesn't jump
Yeah.
out at you.
Enter here.
Because you're coming off of a small parking lot, which, you know, you only got this 20 space lot to
I
start
mean, you
with.
got to think too with lighting and signage and stuff like that. You know, it'll only be unfamiliar for a short time,
Yeah.
and then it'll just be the way it is. Functionality, you know, yes. Does it seem more appropriate to be in the front? Yeah, because that's what we're used to. But if all the parking is on
It's
this
coming in
side,
that way, right?
it's directing them right at the center of that building, not back around the front.
yeah, no.
I
no,
think it'll work.
I think so too. I just wonder if, you know, more cosmetically, maybe there's a little more something to draw your eye to the fact that that's the entrance. Because it is a community asset. It is, you know, a lot of, I mean, you know, you guys know how many preschools show up to take a tour, you know, during the school
Or
year.
even walk-in medical,
Yeah.
stuff like that. We
Yeah.
want it to be
Walk-in
obvious.
medicals we do is, it is a crazy number. So
Yeah.
even just for people to be able to identify how to get in for medical.
Yeah, because, you know, and obviously we're talking really rough conceptual, you know, visuals, but, you know, you have an apparatus, you know, entrance on one side and you have a front entrance on the other. You know, the more we could draw the attention, I guess, to, hey, this is the front door, right? This is the garage over here and this is the front door. I think the better received it will be too. It'll look maybe a little more like a public, you know, inviting space. I do wonder too, is there more we can do to integrate the Veterans Park into the design rather than just slapping a parking lot up at the top? You know, can we, you know, we think about sidewalks and things like that. Can we connect that space a little better and make it a true part of the design, right? I mean, it's there. I think it's underappreciated today. You know, can we make that a little more of a focal of what's going on, you know, in the whole site design? You know, I think that will win some goodwill as well, right?
So I think the bottom right corner of that parking lot, maybe take the first 2 or 3 spaces and, you know, right at the northwest corner of the intersection there, and create, like, maybe put the flagpole plaza there, or a display, a sculpture, or an old piece of apparatus, you know, like a museum piece or something on that corner, because people wait at that light a lot, and it's just something to look at and draw your attention into the site.
I was actually thinking about that top parking lot and maybe doing something to create a little more separation, so it's not confusing, so people don't park there, and now they're walking across the front of the station, looking for the front door that really is, 100 and something feet away and around the corner. I'm not saying cut it off, but just do something so that it's obvious that that's for the park.
Cut the parking down a little bit, maybe have a little more green space in between. I mean, you're never gonna have 20 cars parked in there to go to the Veterans Memorial.
That's my only concern, Matt, is just, seeing that, people see that, right away, that's the first thing they see versus,
Yeah, no, the conversations around the Veterans Park and that parking was sort of, boy, it'd be, we're taking away a lot of green space, to build the building, because I think the park right now goes down to about here. But the memorial being up there, and so it was, maximizing the amount of parking to do that. There's no programmed amount of parking spaces we need there, so I can cut it down to 5 if everyone's good with that. 10, give me a number, and then we can. That would free us up to get a little bit more of a connection between
maybe
the building and that.
keep the 10 on the high side and then have the green space in between, so it's just a little more identified.
Would there ever be a desire to do a firefighter memorial as part of that setup?
So I think if we were to do something like that, to your point, I think that most firefighter memorials are close to the front door.
Yeah.
So it would be like on that corner right there.
Okay.
As people are coming in, they see
Right.
it, it's right kind of adjacent to the front door. So I think some sort of a monument there would probably go right on there.
Or you do it at Auburn Street when you have, the gazebo and
Is there, I mean, we changed around the whole ground floor, but pushing the administrative area to that corner of the first floor and taking the bunk, living space and coming straight off, the wedge space here, coming back and filling that in and, using that space. And so you're still on the first floor. Maybe it's a little bit further away from the bays and travel path from the bunk rooms and stuff. But if you were to kind of reorganize, and then that would we could get the entrance to that corner, and you still have the parking on parallel to 20 maybe, but you could have that entrance at the corner, and it would be on the same face really as the
Close enough.
equipment bays.
The only downside I see to that is, when you're coming down Prospect Street or even on 20 at the light, right, you're going to see that entrance, as odd as it might seem. Like, you're going to see it where it is now. If it's on the, that odd corner, you have to park in that front spot. So you'd be walking out of the way closer to the, apparatus.
Oh no, I'd probably keep the entrance facing 20, but just at that corner, right at that corner.
Just move it over to the right.
Yeah, and have the vestibule as the outside corner of the bottom floor there, so you see it when you're coming around and going into the parking space, and kind of identifies the front of the building. With everybody was talking about that, if you have all the equipment bays on one side, then the entrances are on the other side of the building. That would make your front door kind of in the same space as the equipment bay. It's going to make it a little bit more challenging to put the bunk rooms and ready rooms a little further back.
Problem is, the roof is pointing towards the right. If the roof was pointing down towards Route 20, down the page,
Oh, the gable on the end of it, yeah.
yeah, that would immediately say that's the front of the building.
Well, you could do a false dormer if you want, but I mean,
Oh, I'm just
it's
saying,
gonna add cost.
yeah.
Do we know what the front looks like, Matt? Like, or what the lobby entrance? I know it was kind of plain, but do you have that?
You got it's not close elevation, I don't think, right?
See, that's wider.
Yeah.
The two drawings don't look alike.
Especially, basically that right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you push it down to the front, well, now you're making, you're creating more walking for a lot of people that are parking over there. Everything's toward the front now. If, you know, say we do extend the parking to the left.
Yeah.
Now everybody's walking to that front corner versus right now, if I look at that, I know that's the front door. It sticks out. There's aesthetic changes in the building. The brick transitions to something else.
Can you point to the front door? Matt?
In between the two.
It's ready to be in front of the dark gray car.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I was looking over here in front of the, see where the roof is?
Oh, with the,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
with
thinking
the,
that's the
the
front.
curtain wall end here, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no sidewalk there, but, you know.
Well, I think that might be the solution, is just if the site design, like the walkways are clear and obvious and maybe illuminated.
Signs.
And, you know, can you lead people from Prospect Street to the front entrance? Then that's gonna take not only people that are just walking around, but also just take your eye that
They're
way.
gonna have no
then that-
choice, because the only parking is gonna be near the front entrance.
Yeah.
It's not gonna parking in front of the apparatus bays.
And that building's
You know.
not gonna be there, right? That white building's not gonna be there?
That's gonna be part of
That
your
still
building.
is part of the
Yeah.
building.
It is, the first phase?
Yeah,
That's the
it's just,
administrative stuff on the bottom.
Okay, all right.
yeah, the administration's all on the bottom. It's whether we have the full second floor or not, it'll be
Yeah.
the question.
Right, right. Okay.
Well, back to my question, I thank you that's showing with the police. I think that's gonna be a big selling point to actually lay that out there, the possible future site, instead of saying it, well, in the screen space. I think when we show it, I think we should show that as a
Dotted line.
dotted lines,
Proposed,
future
yeah.
proposed with the parking spaces up front, everything, just so people could see what the flow would look like. I still would maybe think in terms of the programming of the building, that community / training room, I think belongs off of that main lobby, kind of like Northbridge's was. And then I'm also looking at, if that's living spaces, those spaces where we've got cars, right now I'm just thinking headlights and traffic and privacy. Those might belong on that second floor. No change of stuff. Now you're talking fire poles and access to the apparatus floor and things of that nature. That'll leave to the chief. But I'm just saying that seems like those living spaces are right.
It has that in it anyway. There is all that access is there anyway, so it's really what the committee wants.
But if communications, the fitness and all that stuff kind of came down, and then we moved some administration and living
Do you put
space up.
do you put the administrative on the second floor? Take your fitness, move that down to where administration was. This way, it'd be closer to the police station for an outside access if it ever does go there. All your stuff's on one floor,
Yeah, but
and then you could kind of reconfigure and then maybe have your overflow space for future expansion.
Basically flip the plan.
In a sense, crisscross, like take up and
Well, you won't need that special slab then if it's on the second floor. I mean, if it's on the first floor, it'll be slab on grade for the fitness.
Right. That's true.
I just.
But
I
having
think-
administration on the second floor, everybody's got to go up a stair. Every visitor's got to go up a stair, or they got to go up an elevator.
who's going to the fire station for anything really?
Anybody's looking for
He
permits,
just
the
said
fire
they have
permits,
walk-in fire.
the amount of walk-ins they have
You're
for.
still gonna have your stuff. I mean, you can still have the main thing.
All
when
your
you walk in, you're gonna
contractors
have
for
that.
permitting and
We
everything.
could potentially design it where it's kind of a mix. You could put administrative, we could do a mix of the administrative or the fire prevention office on the first floor. The fire prevention office is gonna get more, they get daily foot traffic.
Right.
So even if you were to put fire prevention and their admin on the first floor, and then the, chief deputy and their administrative assistant on the second floor, I think fire prevention is by far gonna see, they have daily foot traffic in and out of there all day.
Yep.
So I think that makes,
I mean,
that would make sense.
I think the concept that the more I come back to on it is there's the working space, there's the living space, and then there is a public component to a fire station, especially one that's going to become headquarters. We have that today. We're crowded, but people come. There's always things going on that the public has to access, and I feel like this design doesn't really accommodate just the number of people that are just coming in from the public to do business, right? There's not really a public operating space to it. There's a vestibule, and then maybe there's a lobby there, I guess, in that design. But then, the training room is over here, and the offices are over here, and you got to go through a bunch of, doors and things to get to
I will
different
say that
areas.
Most new stations that we've toured, the large classrooms and EOCs are on the first floor immediate off the lobby. That's been pretty consistent in anything.
I mean, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, obviously we're site constricted too, right? So if we put that on the first floor, then something's gotta go on the second floor that maybe isn't as ideal, like the living space. But I just think if we're, you know, we're trying to sort of sell this concept as well to the public, I feel like it needs to be a public inviting.
I don't think we should overlook the aspect of the fire station just for public use, though. It still needs to be the best way to flow for the station to operate.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely,
You know, to
absolutely.
have a
Yep.
functioning
No, no,
room for them, you know.
No,
If they gotta go upstairs for the room, well, they go upstairs for the room.
yeah. Yeah, I think even if the training is upstairs and things like that, are there ways we can configure it where it feels like there is a public aspect of this building, right? So there's administration, you know, we don't want people wandering around everybody's office. There's the living space, we don't want everybody wandering around, you know, the bunk space. There's the apparatus floor, we don't want people wandering around there. But then there is a public, you know, space. You think about like the way the middle school is designed, right? You have class space, you have administration, you have public, you know, on the other side of the hallway, so that you can have, you know, there's, you know, things going on in the auditorium and in the gym. That's all separated from the, you know, the learning space and the administrative space.
I think to your point with the lobby too, I don't think we can underestimate the power of selling the facility by having an inviting lobby. I mean, we went to Northbridge and I learned a little bit about the history of Northbridge in that the chief was very proud of.
Yep.
Yeah.
This beam was taken from this mill and this is a historical piece. If we're very tight,
I
you
have enough Auburn Fire Department history in the closet in my office to fill that lobby.
Perfect, but those are,
So much, we have 100 years of memorabilia that is just in boxes.
right, but we shouldn't, not provide the space to display that properly
Mm-hmm.
so you can, when you give your tours and be very proud of the history of the department, and as a selling point, as we try and, get the taxpayers to buy in to the project, to say,
Lexington, we did their fire station, the fire headquarters, and it's, you come in the lobby, on the left, there's a museum that holds an antique apparatus and a bunch of memorabilia. Big glass display wall between the two, and then on the right, your training room, stair right up to administration, so it's all kind of right there.
Is that enough feedback from us to give you some ideas? Do you have questions for us in terms of what we're kind of, we've been a little vague, but
No,
that's.
I think there's a lot to react to. I think it has the potential to change a lot of things in the floor plan that I can't figure out on my own. I need to meet with the chief and sort of, the two of us need to digest the comments and figure out how they fit into the space constraints, the operations, and the like, so.
I think the comments were really good, and I already kind of have my wheels spinning on how to kind of make some of these areas a little more functional for public and all that, so I thought the feedback was really good.
Yeah, you guys are a good committee to work with. I like this. Not just rabble rousing and yelling for no reason. This is all good, thoughtful conversation.
That's
which I
actually
really
lower on the
appreciate.
agenda, but
and I will throw this out, I threw it out at the last meeting, that Veterans Park, great space, but underutilized. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody actually in the park. And I don't know if it's even a possibility of incorporating that into some sort of front lobby walk-up area. I don't know what the selling points are, if it can even be moved based on how it was done. But, if you need to shuffle with this green space and parking spots, talking about limiting spots, is somehow incorporating that as part of the lobby and, actually getting it where it gets seen and, just as a thought.
The statue that's there.
The statue, whatever makes up.
They had
Myself,
a skating rink there once.
on the front part with that
Oh, yeah.
designated
that's
parking
not-
area they used to have.
yeah.
But
I don't think that even
just
got
as
used.
just as a thought of
for a
consideration.
couple of years.
I've never actually walked over there myself to see what the park consists of.
It would get more used moving it like that.
See
It
it
would
more
be
foot
more of
traffic
a.
every day, yeah.
This is
thing.
still there. I think up here is just the raised bed that they had for the,
That was the hockey, yeah.
flood. Yeah.
Kind of hats off to the veterans too, from the fire department to say, hey, we want to recognize you guys up front here. That's a nice gesture.
Better maintained, be a flag, raised, half staff all the time, yeah, when it's appropriate.
Can be done, right? Can
Anything can be
moved?
done.
Yeah.
With the right amount of money.
I'm supposed to add that part.
That's not the major money.
Do we, wanna move on to the next piece?
Okay, we all talked out on location issues and
Yeah,
stuff right at the moment.
I think the next step, just to wrap it up, next step would be, work with the chief and he can obviously talk with Mark and I and, anything that we need, but I think we just, at some point, we need to know when we can have a second presentation or here's my response to the feedback. I would assume you'll need a few weeks, couple weeks at least for that, right?
Yeah.
So we asked for a scenario B, right? This is scenario A. Didn't we ask for a scenario B to see what it would look like?
Yeah, I think there's a 1B and
In other words,
2B, yeah, I
don't
mean,
get rid of that yet. right?
yeah. I mean, I think we have like two major options depending on what we do with that dispatch space, and then some thoughts of the public, access, so, yeah.
Does the
And
committee have a feeling one way or another on option one or option two as far as the exterior rendering or materials? I think we got a good sense of what people were looking for, maybe.
It was two.
That looks
Or
nice.
stone or
Option
something.
two
Yeah, we
looks
wanna see
nice.
that, yeah. I would think.
You like one?
I do, but
Uh-oh. Wasn't one kind of plain Jane? No?
Well,
Can't
it was
remember.
drawn that way, but you don't know. I mean, it was going to be clabrets and
There's a lot more maintenance.
bat and board, but you don't know what. They
Option
could
one's
change
a lot
colors
more-
on it.
I guess really what we were asking was, is the committee interested in kind of, do they not like this at all and they want to blow up the exterior design and go with something different? It sounds like we're going to stick with truss roof versus pitch. I'm sorry.
Flat roof.
Pitched roof versus flat.
Oh,
Yeah.
What we're looking at looked pretty good.
Okay. I
I
just
thought-
wanted to make sure that there weren't going to be any kind of major deviations that we needed to consider on the exterior.
No, and I think the jutting out of the upstairs, the open spaces and stuff, I like, the concept there. I think, could this look more like a fire station somehow? I'm not sure, but I've only got two views of it, so,
They'll get there.
yeah, and obviously half of that would be, what do you put in that corner down here, in terms of an old fire hydrant or whatever, right? Really, signboard, I would assume at some point, like the one we have, and things like that, so.
As long as there's no shrubs or planters on the second floor. I think that took more heat from the last design. There's a couple of planters that somehow people get focused on.
I will say to that point, the designer was placing a whole bunch of oak trees over here, and I said, hell no.
Oh,
That's a bad idea.
yep.
Blowing leaves into the bays and blocking your view driving out, that's a double whammy.
Dropping acorns on everybody.
Maybe Larry putting it in the game, some trucks gonna be taking bad turns.
Just look at that corner right now.
Do we need any kind of motion?
Still gets hit for this day.
No.
Was there anything else on the agenda that you needed Matt for?
No, I just I think partly the timing wise, what you think your next steps. I mean, I know we got to go back to town manager and get some feedback out of him and selectmen and stuff to give you some second floor options. But
Yeah, I have some stuff that I can work on, but I think a big piece of that is going
That's
to
a-
be. what
that's a
town
big chunk,
administration is gonna
yeah.
say. So I can't really go with, I guess we're gonna call that option A, no dispatch. I can't start working on that until you tell me that
right,
that's actually something that's the desire of the town. So, get me that information, and I'll work on an ETA. I gotta talk to some folks and see how we're feeling. So I don't wanna give you a hard and
Okay.
fast 2, 3, 4 weeks yet, but
Do you think before Thanksgiving, is that reasonable, assuming we get timely answers to the questions? That's where I'm trying to, slot in. Are we talking a November meeting to?
He's saying he needs a definite decision from us, which we have to have a definite decision from the select board.
Right.
Which means we have to send it to the select board, who doesn't meet for another 2 weeks, and then we don't meet for another 2 weeks after that, and then that's Thanksgiving already.
yep.
Okay.
yeah. So I'll get you a more definitive timeline of exactly what I need time-wise in order to get all this pulled together. But I think the more appropriate way to really approach the schedule moving forward is looking at Springtown meeting and working our way back to sort of when decision-ready information needs to be provided to you in order to get that going. So when do you need a warrant article put together? When, how does that benefit to me giving you project cost estimate, so I can back coordinate when I need to get my estimators on board and all that, so. I think we have to look forward to the schedule, but I think we also have to start to put some deadlines in when we need to make some decisions.
That's what I'll do.
That's half of why we're looking for open.
That's gonna be, our OPM's gonna drive that schedule. Yeah,
I don't think that's out there next fall, right?
well, OPM, we're talking about getting.
Spring.
Well, no, like as soon as we can turn it around.
Yeah.
Right, so it's going on the warrant for November.
Yep.
To fund it. And then RFP, I assume, is ready to go. That goes out 30 days. We have to pick one. So it's probably January when the OPM will start, in that ballpark, I'm thinking. So maybe there's probably some things that we'll have to do ahead of that for that schedule. Certainly the select board and, what are we doing about dispatch? That's something we'll have to do.
I can talk to the manager tomorrow morning. I have a meeting with him anyway and get some direction for him on how he wants to handle that.
Yeah.
We'll also have that conversation.
Right.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for everything.
Thank you,
Thank you for the information.
Been a pleasure.
So, let's see, the next item was a town meeting warrant. It's already written and in there. It's just, Greg had brought up an idea that it's done with some of the other warrant items and stuff about having more detailed description.
Yeah.
To help out. with
Yeah,
it,
so the school committee does this, school, administration for all of their warrants, every town meeting is, because the warrant, you read the warrant article and you're like, what is this really doing? Because it's a very technical way of going about it. So they provide an explainer essentially of each one. It says, hey, we're asking you to allocate this sum of money because it's reimbursement for something that we've already spent and, things like that. So I thought it would be a good idea for us to include one in our warrant article that's going up for this November 13th, 15th, something like that. Special town meeting here in the fall that's going to basically ask for the money for us to hire an OPM in order to work before we get to the construction, phase of the project. So I took a stab at a draft that I think we've handed out if you want to take a read, but this is really intended to serve as a starting point. I did run this past town manager just to make sure I didn't make any factual errors. He said it, everything in there looks fine. So essentially what we're saying is, and then some of this is the minutia of how you have to appropriate money through town meeting, but we had allocated money to buy the Chuck's property and to tear it down and everything. So there's leftover money in that budget essentially that can only be reappropriated by town meeting. So we're asking for $100,000 out of that for the OPM, to contract with an OPM. So and this sort of explains that, the money's already been appropriated for the use of the fire, potential new fire station. So we're just reallocating funds that have already been approved. And then to explain what an OPM does a little bit. And then, basically suggest like this is the timeline, right? So we've already allocated money for the architecture firm. That was what did I say? October 2023 town meeting authorized that. This funding is just for the design phase. And then that OPM would stay on for the construction phase, assuming, the general vote goes in favor of the project and the money gets approved at town meeting, so.
Have they been presented with a total cost budget of some kind?
No. And there's,
But they just shot down the other building 4 years ago, right? That was too expensive, so.
it never got to vote because public opinion basically indicated that it probably wouldn't pass. So it was withdrawn,
So we can't say that this isn't our budget, really, because we don't have a budget yet. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, what we're saying is we want to allocate funds for this phase of
Yeah.
the project, right? So
But we don't really have a budget yet.
Well, this would be our budget for the design phase, right? So we've already allocated the money for the architect.
Yep.
So town meeting already approved that, back last October.
This is for the part of the demolition. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's-
The money was for the
So if you laid
demolition.
that out in the blocks,
That's-
demolition X, whatever makes up whatever money we're working with, it would be easier to understand than all this.
Yeah, I don't know,
verbiage.
I don't have the actual.
Your OPM is a critical part of
Right,
your.
Yeah,
of
nobody's.
your design.
All
Yeah.
I'm saying is, the question is it in our budget or not? That's all. I think that's gonna be a major question, all right? Is it in our budget? We don't really have a budget.
Then we're asking for a budget.
But, yeah.
But it's coming out of something that was already approved.
Right.
We're
Correct.
just reappropriating.
It's leftover
it,
money,
so-
We
basically.
could say that. in
Well,
Yeah,
dollars
he
and cents.
did right
No,
here,
I know,
though.
but there's no, it doesn't say how much was approved, how much been allocated, what's left over.
Well, it references the previous warrants, so that.
We don't wanna tell them, we don't wanna let it out how much is left over. It's too early to get into that discussion, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, demolition hasn't happened yet, so I don't know. I just know that the estimates have come back way lower than was anticipated, so we know there's at least $100,000.
Yeah, the bid was
Available.
awarded, and it came back less than we had anticipated, and had already got that money appropriated, so I think the
Right.
thought process was, we had money kind of in that account, so to speak,
Yeah,
to utilize.
and there's the only thing that can happen to that money is for town meeting to reappropriate it.
Yeah,
So-
but you don't wanna start to tear the building down and found conditions, okay, that you have to go back to town meeting and say, oh, by the way, we found
No.
an asbestos mine under the building that we gotta mitigate.
We had a consultant look at the building to give us an idea of what needed to be appropriated. They appropriated on the high side. The bid's already been awarded. We don't anticipate any surprises, so I think, right? We
Well,
should do a good
and the
job. I
warrant
think
is-
there's still a buffer.
Starting
no,
October
There should still
28th.
be a-
This warrant is going up for, you know, it's on the warrant, so it's going out, town meeting is gonna consider it.
You're
Whether
just
we,
trying to get
whether we
more
provide an explainer or
information.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
But the way it was worded, like all of these, it says, you know, to see if town meeting will vote to amend the, you know, warrant article from the last meeting, number, you know, 13 or whatever it was, to appropriate $100,000 to hire an OPM.
Right.
And then by the fire chief and or by town manager and this committee is basically how it's gonna read. So I think, you know, the intention here is let's just provide a little bit more background, and I also would suggest that we do a presentation. But the deadline to get something into the warrant and mailed out to town meeting, we have to approve this today so that we can send it to the clerk and get it mailed out. The presentation, we can work on at a future meeting.
You make a motion?
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept this and present to the warrant committee.
I second.
All right, any other discussions, comments,
Questions?
If not, all those in favor of using this,
As written, I guess.
yeah, as written?
Yep.
Aye? All those opposed? Good, to vote.
Just underline that part. That's the key.
I kind of left, I know we had, we're getting late here, we're already 3 hours in. I put it in there for just open discussion about topics that people may want to come up at future meetings. You know, to
So
lay out there. I mean, we have 100 of them that we just fired off at them right now, but.
I have one. I think we should do a presentation at town meeting, at the November town meeting. Just a high-level timeline of what's going on. Touch on, hey, we're asking for this because this is where we're at in the process. You know, essentially underline the fact that we're going through design right now. We're gonna get a project plan together through this process that we're gonna present to the voters. And then if the voters approve, then it goes to town meeting, or it might have to go backwards. I don't remember what date's what, but.
It's gotta go to town meeting first and then go to town
Yeah, so
vote.
like they did with the school, it goes to town meeting, who says, if the voters approve, then we approve the money, and then they have the town vote, and basically just reassure everyone that there's a process, that everybody's gonna get to vote on this final decision, that we're gonna have, plenty of presentations and things coming in the spring, and just kind of give that high level, timeline and things like that. I'm willing to volunteer to, like I did for this, put a rough draft together for, the next meeting for us to consider, work through it. Whoever wants to deliver it, I don't care. I can do it, or if you want to do it, doesn't matter to me, but I can help at least put the initial structure together, and then we can kind of all agree that, hey, this is what we want to say in front of town meeting, because that's going to be our only opportunity to address town meeting before it comes up, for the real, the full project. So I think it's important to just, having been on town meeting, for as long as I was, it's going to be important just to sort of cut down on some of the rumors that are going to fly about $80 million buildings and things like that, right? And saying, we've got, this is the process. We haven't made any decisions yet. We don't have, this is where we're at. This is what we need to do next. This is what we're going to do. And at the end of the day, it's going to come before town meeting and the voters, to either approve it or not, right? So I think that's just important. So.
Maybe if we get like a schedule, a couple of bullet points, right?
Yeah, I was thinking like a timeline, right?
sure,
Like
right, this is how it's
even going back just a little bit to be like master plan identified. We had a public safety committee that did what, everything that they did. Then we have this committee. We're in a design phase for this. We bought the land. We're doing design. We need the OPM to help us, to work on our behalf during that design phase so that we can, evaluate different cost options and come up with the right, the right plan for Auburn. And then it's going to go to the voters to, say yes or no. And I think we just lay that out in a few slides and not. And then obviously we're going to have to be there to answer questions, because there will be questions. But
Need a motion?
no, I think it's just a potential agenda item for
the next meeting.
the next meeting.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
If town meeting doesn't approve the building of this fire station, does the OPM get terminated?
So the OPM contract is for design phase. So at the point that we're presenting to the voters in town meeting, that contract is up, I believe. And
Well,
then
it'd
the
be-
extension of it would be as part of the, what they're voting on
So
for
this-
the approval.
So this OPM is just for the design, it's not for the implementation?
And it's not,
This
it's
portion
not
of
the,
it is.
Design.
I think design, we gotta be careful with the term, it's $100,000 to get us to the vote, right? The design phase will go past the vote.
Okay.
So if we get to the vote and they say no, $100,000 is the max we're gonna spend on that OPM anyway.
Yeah.
Luckily, if the vote goes through, then we'll re-up the budget.
But that'll be,
Establish a budget.
that will be presented as part of the building budget.
Yep.
Right, so that'll be what they're voting on, whether to approve the new
total
station or
cost,
not.
right.
We'll also include the OPM for the construction phase and whatever other phases.
The architectural pre-construction stuff and everything.
Yeah. So I called it design and construction just to keep it simple, but yeah.
I think we need the OPM to help us evaluate the quotes we're gonna get. That's what.
Well, I
that's
think
what we
even,
wanna
I
say.
think even the options,
Yep.
right? I mean,
just
we need the OPM to say, hey,
At
look,
that level.
should we put a second floor on that's just a shell? Should we put a roof on it instead? I think the OPM is gonna be valuable to give us, like, what's it really gonna cost, or at least some idea.
Any other items you may want to talk about at the next meeting?
Next meeting?
No. All right. Next agenda item was public comments, but seeing there's no public here, there's no comments. I had scheduled, I put on here the next meeting would be Tuesday, the 29th. I don't know if that, I know we were working on Mondays before and trying to go in between selectmen meetings and stuff, and but we had the holiday, so I didn't know. Do you, when? So you're on the select board, right? Yeah.
My wife is the chair.
Oh, yeah, okay. Do you know what they're meeting tonight?
Yeah, they had a meeting tonight because yesterday was a holiday, so it should be 2 weeks. So if we meet again in 2 weeks, we're on a Monday, we're going to be meeting the same day as them
Okay.
again.
So we could push it to the 4th, the next Monday after that. The first.
Should
I
work.
think that would be fine, because I think the only agenda item we
Be to
really
go over
will
the
have is the
presentation.
presentation.
Right.
And then
And
any
an update
update.
on if, what feedback on the command center, I mean,
Yeah.
We have
Do
to
we
make
wanna
sure this
meet
room,
here?
oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Well, I
So-
think
Yeah.
that
We
gets
had
us
the same
back on
question.
our.
that
on
gets
our-
us back on our schedule, and I think, I mean, this room works better than the select board room, I
School
think.
committee meets what on Thursdays?
So if the committee wants to maintain this room, I've talked to the school superintendent, this meeting space is available on Mondays and Tuesdays, there are no conflicts.
Okay, we were looking to try to get back to Monday,
So
so
there is no conflicts, and the school administration said you guys are more than welcome to use this space on Mondays for your meetings.
Perfect.
And I think Monday the 4th works.
So Monday the
Monday
4th
the
then would be our
4th.
next meeting.
So trying to get away from matching up with the select board, which one would be May.
All right. Seeing that's everything here, I think. So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
So moved.
And a first and a second. Everybody in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
In favor, they're gone.
I did, Joe.